It was Native American Month, but I decided not to have Michelle do another one of those crazy.
I'll find out if it's too short.
I'll just mention it. I knew about it last week, but it's like, do I want to do another one of those things?
Oh, do you remember the kid that
I can't quite get it. I got it started, but I couldn't finish it. Thanks.
So I'll try to be with it as much as possible.
But I should ask my daughter if other people can do it.
Well, I know down.
Your daughter's got a salon, or she works there in a salon?
My daughter's from Nikki, but Nikki, I grew up with I've known Nikki since she was 8, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like she's like one of yours kind of.
Yes,
Yeah.
and she owns a salon in Holt.
Oh. Salon Holt.
Salon something or other.
Amy knows. My daughter donates her
Okay. Yeah, if you find out, let me know.
I'd donate my hair, but then I'd have none. If I gave up one, I'd have zero. Fine hair too, I have all my life. Barbers used to complain. And of course, people with fine hair end up losing it, like me.
You're doing good for.
Yeah, better than my sons who all got mostly bald in their 30s.
Oh, my husband's been bald since 40.
I don't know where they got it from, because my father-in-law at 94, he had more hair than most people have in their peak of their life.
What about your mother-in-law?
601.
My mother-in-law, my wife's mother, she had fine hair. Yeah, she was kind of light. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we don't know about her father because I think he died young. On the other hand, I had my Aunt Sophie, my dad's sister, one of her sisters. She had 3 sons, all of whom were bald in their 20s and 30s, which should have traced back to my dad's dad, I think, but he died young, so we never knew whether he would have been bald or not either. You know?
Well, so far, my father has a whole head of hair, and he passed when he was 42, but still.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's how old my grandfather would have been, 42 when he passed. 602. Oh, okay, 602, all right. We got to have Dan. Where's Dan?
We lost him somewhere.
Stephen, is Dan out there?
I don't see your gavel.
Do you need it?
No.
It's over here. I can grab it.
No.
Dan, get over here.
Okay. Little past 6, so we're going to call this meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Township Board of Meridian on November 2nd, 2021. And we'll start out by, for all those who are present and can, rise to say the Pledge of Allegiance. No, you don't have to tell me, it's all right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we need a roll call.
Supervisor Stichel?
Here.
Clerk Guthrie's here. Treasurer DeShane?
Present.
Trustee Jackson?
Present.
Trustee Opsimer?
Present.
Trustee Sumlin?
Present?
Trustee Wazinski.
Present.
Are all present?
All are present.
Thank you. Okay, we now go on to our presentations, and we have two today. The first one is the introduction of police sponsorship candidate, Isabella Aker, I believe it is. That looks like Isabella.
Mr. Supervisor, board members, thank you for having us tonight. This is Isabella Acker. Isabella comes to us from Sunfield, Michigan. She's a lifelong resident of Mid-Michigan. She's currently enrolled at Western Michigan University, where she's a Dean's List member, and she's actually going to finish in 3 years with her bachelor's degree. I'm bringing Ms. Acker forward today with the request that we sponsor Ms. Acker to the Police Academy to help fill our ranks. She's a very highly qualified candidate. She's gone through our rigorous background and interview processes, and I bring her forward to introduce her to the board. Isabella?
Hello, it is very nice to meet you all. I just wanted to say thank you all for your time and your consideration, and I am excited to start my relationship with Meridian Township.
Well, thank you, and if you'll indulge me, you're from Sunfield, you said?
Yes, that is correct.
How long has your family been in Sunfield?
Oh, wow. A long time. My parents have lived there forever, my grandparents.
My
their
wife taught in
parents.
Sunfield in the early 70s
Yeah.
at the school right there in
Really?
Sunfield, yes.
Oh, okay. Yes, my family owns Mapes Furniture.
What?
My family owns Mapes Furniture in
She
Sunfield.
may have had one of your parents or grandparents or somebody
Yep.
in her class.
Yep.
That's great. Well,
Awesome.
nice meeting you.
You too.
Any questions for her? No, we look forward to your progressing and, oh, we did have questions. Go ahead.
Just one. So you will actually graduate in May of 2022?
Yes, so since the academy is at LCC, it counts for college credits. So I have done all my required courses at Western up until this point. So after my completion of the academy at LCC, those credits will transfer over and I'll be done with my bachelor's and the academy all in May of 2022.
Awesome. Wow. Thank you. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Good
Anyone
luck.
else? Well, we look forward to progressing in your studies and to eventually joining up with Chief Plaga and his crew.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, board.
Okay, we now have the Enhanced Township website presentation.
Could I add just one more comment?
Yes, please.
This is truly an example of aggressive recruiting. We're finding students on their way to graduation, not quite graduated, and incorporating training for the kinds of positions that we have open and we're looking for in their college education. So I would congratulate the chief on that aggressive recruitment he's engaging in.
Well said. Manager.
Yeah, well said, Trustee Herring-Jackson. And then I would encourage all of you to, if you move forward this evening and Isabel actually joins our department, to find another police department in Michigan with 25% women. We set the bar high in the state of Michigan for female membership, and that's under the chief's direction.
Well, you have a presentation for us.
Yes, hello, thank you, Supervisor Syka and the board. You are all aware of the Township website redesign project. It basically started last year with an audit of our website content and internal feedback from staff and employees about challenges or anything that they would like to see differently on the Township website. Industry standard states you should refresh your website every few years because technology is ever changing. So I would like to give you a sneak peek of what the new website will be. We have 2 full weeks, so it's not fully complete. I am still working vigorously to make all the updates for our launch on Monday, November 15th is when we will have a new website go live to the public. We would like to thank you in advance for your patience, as our web provider, Granicus, stated that when they switch to go live to our new website, there may be some hiccups, so please be patient with us as we flip the switch, so to speak. So I'm going to start by our current website. which was launched in September 2017. And we kicked off our 2021 redesign project at the end of April. There are several phases we went through, from consulting, where, can everybody see that? That's the current site, obviously. Thanks, Derek. The discovery package, we did a heat map and analytics for what things residents, community members, visitors to our site were looking for. And that drove our decisions on how to lay out the navigation of our new site. Here's our new website. This is the homepage. Migration completed with all the content on the current site. There was a 2-month period where we have to manually migrate content from the old site to the new site when it was in development and the staging. So we do have some things that thankfully staff filled out a form that we put together so we can track any changes to the current site and they can be made to the staging site. I want to point out a couple of features. We have rearranged the main navigation to be smaller mega menus. We retitled some of the navigation of the mega menus. How Do I is a very popular one, so people can find things very quickly in different categories. We move the search bar to the center so it's nice and big for people to search content. These are our call to action buttons. These are the types of content that people were searching for most, so we want to put those on the front. They can be changed, so if we find down the road we need to add different ones, but they do tell you to be consistent with your call to actions and don't change them too frequently. We have a spotlight section that you can have multiple. We can call out major projects, major information updates in the spotlight section. We've combined the meetings and events calendar into one calendar, and then the news section is also there as well. At the top, the most exciting feature is the service finder, which is brand new to the website, where we can break down what people want to apply, contact, find. We have more work to do to add to this, but I want to show you some examples. So if they want to contact staff, for example, takes them directly to the staff directory. Another feature is called a sticky header. For those who don't know, if you scroll down on our old website, you can't get back up to the mega menus. You have to scroll all the way back up to get to the menus. This is a sticky header. No matter where you are on the screen, you can see the main menus. And they just made it smaller, and it's called sticky. One second, I'm just looking at my notes. I'm going to show you one of the department pages. So right now we're in the phase of user acceptance training, and what I want to point out, these are widgets. Obviously communications is cut off, so that widget should not look like that. So this is the phase where we test the different widgets and the components on the website to see if they're functioning properly from the development to the staging site. We're focusing on a sidebar with subpages with each department so that people can find additional content from interior pages. So they'll have a similar look and feel depending on the type of web page. I'm trying to think. Oh, okay. And then after the launch on the 15th, we will be doing a marketing rollout where we'll highlight the features of the website and encourage people to utilize our online services. If COVID taught us anything, people are online, and we want to make it as simple as possible and easy for them to navigate as much as they can. So this web design has the end user in mind, and they don't need to know the inner workings of the township to find the content that they're looking for. So that was our sneak peek. I don't want to show too much because we are still working. But we look forward to launching on November 15th, and the remainder of the year we will continue making sure that all the migration and everything works properly. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions, board members? Clerk?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Yates, for this overview. I know the current website has some issues with accessibility and with some of the forms that are on there kind of not being accessible formats for all users. Can you talk at all a little bit or about what some of the resolve will be for that, what we can expect to see?
Yes, thank you. Accessibility is one of the things that was in the forefront of our minds in this design, and we talked to Granicus a lot about that. We made a forms and permits page. We will have interactive forms, a little more robust than the current site. It's a different type of widget. They are upgrading their system. I will have a disclaimer on this page that says if you need a paper copy or a fillable PDF, we can also give that to them. Because from our research with our ADA compliance expert at Granicus, they said that PDFs are actually not accessible in just the form of a PDF. So there's a lot more work to do. There's more than 5,000 documents on this website. So I'm trying to scale back, and we're trying to remove documents and turn them into more interactive forms to address accessibility. Another accessibility issue is that a lot of our content on the current website was in header 3 because of the more of the look and the feel of it. That makes a person who has a reader say that everything's a headline, and it doesn't break up the content from a paragraph to a header type of content. So we're addressing that when we update the content per page. I did budget for communications next year to also align for accessibility. There's always more we can do to improve accessibility of our website. There's many different platforms that we could utilize as well.
Just a follow-up to that, does your office oversee training with other department staff for accessible forms and documents that go on the website, or is this something that your department will solely be doing?
Yes and no. Yes to both, to be honest. So we've done some training already, and our web provider, Granicus, did do some training for different levels of the website to address multiple things, especially since we have a lot of new staff members who are utilizing the website. The forms is definitely going to be a longer process, and we will address training on proper PDF and creating these forms. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Treasurer.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to look at it. It's really welcoming and aesthetically very appealing. I like your service finder. We used to call those wizards, I think, but that term never caught on. This is a much better way to put it. And I also like your focus on the user and going back and doing the heat maps to see why they came to the site and direct them there quickly. I might suggest that when you put the departments in, you think about rearranging them, not so much alphabetically, but which departments are called on most often. But other than that, it's impressive, and I'm looking forward to our live date in 2 weeks. Nice work.
Thank you.
Yes, Trustee Jackson.
Ms. Yates, is there anything that we can find by whatever means on the current site that's been left off of this site?
Majority of the items that were removed from the transition was outdated content, old documents, news and calendar items that are more than a few years old. I think the biggest change would be just the layout. Where in the website would the content live? I don't think we took anything away necessarily, but repackaged it and changed the navigation of where that information would be located and have it accessible in different areas so people could find it and they don't have to search more than 1 to 2 clicks.
And just one more comment. This is not a criticism, but the first thing I see in these 5 buttons is pay me money, how you pay me money. And I just had a visceral reaction to that.
So the call to action buttons are the ones that people do find frequently. The forms and permits is a page just for forms and permits. That is new, but maybe we should take the dollar signs out of the icons to address that. Thank you.
Actually, I thought more Parks and Rec or About Us before, among those 5 buttons before bill payment.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
I will say, though, that is going to be the number one reason people go to our website. It's going to be the pay.
Yeah.
They want to know how,
Yeah.
what they go. All right, thank you very much. Excellent presentation. We're looking forward to this thing being finalized and rolled out. It's going to be exciting.
Thank you.
Among the many citizen complaints I get, there's a number of them still that are about, the current website, which is much improved over the old one from before that. And I take great pleasure in saying, well, we're working on another one, so I could say it with even more strength and conviction. Thank you.
Well, good to hear. Thank you. And I did forget to mention that it is mobile friendly and responsive still. So a lot of people access our website through their phones. And then I think I said at a earlier presentation, video can be the hero image, they call it, as the background of the homepage, but on mobile it won't play a video because then it would reduce the load times for that.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, our next item is citizens addressing agenda items and non-agenda items. I don't see any citizens here today, so we'll save our spiel. And we'll now move on to the Township Manager's report. Manager Walsh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor. Before I start, I'd like to ask Manager Perry to go to the podium if you could. Next year, we have 2 major projects coming with the M43, the Grand River project, and the Okemos Road Bridge project. Could you just briefly talk about what's coming up Thursday for the residents, I think at noon and 4 o'clock, and just generally talk about, and this is more important than anything information I could provide tonight. I want the community to be aware of what's going on.
Sure. So in 2022, after several years of preparation, the Michigan Department of Transportation will be resurfacing a large portion of Grand River and also reconstructing 2 portions on Grand River. One is across from Playmakers. I'm sure the residents that drive through there notice the road's kind of sloughing off to the north. And the pathway, we've tried to patch that over several years. Part of this project that they're performing will take care of that, so we won't have that issue anymore. And then also at the intersection of Okemos Road and Grand River, there's some drainage work that needs to be done there, and they're actually going to raise the elevation of that intersection, similar to what they did at Jolly Road and Okemos Road several years ago. When you drive through it now, you don't even think about it, but that intersection actually was raised. And they're looking to raise that almost close to 2 feet. So that's a significant construction project that's going to be underway. And obviously, what's associated with that is some detours and impacts to traffic, impacts to businesses. And MDOT is having their kickoff meeting to talk about their strategy, their traffic control plan. This Thursday, they're having a meeting at noon. It'll run a couple hours, and then they're having one at 4 o'clock, which will run a couple hours. And it's located here in the town hall room. And again, this is the first of many. We'll be communicating this project probably for the next 2 or 3 months, and then as it proceeds, we'll be working with MDOT to provide updates to our residents. And we're working to get the Ingham County Road Department to this meeting too, because we're sure that there'll be questions about the bridge replacement project, which is also occurring next year. And again, a lot of what's driving this is budget cycles. And again, I guess that's the argument. Do you want to live with construction for 1 year, or do you want to live with construction for 2 or 3 years? But at this point, it's going to be a 1-year construction headache for everyone. But we know that that's going to play with and into that. So again, we invite everyone to attend those meetings as best as possible. But if you can't, please know that there'll be additional opportunities to get the word out to, again, our residents and also our businesses. So.
Thank you. And we're also, just for the residents now that you may not be able to attend on Thursday, we are we're recording the Ms. Yates is arranged with MDOT to record the meeting and to put that on our website for those residents who may not be able to attend, just so the board's aware of that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that update. We are really close to selecting a planner. As you know, Mr. Menser left months ago, and the new director, Schmidt, came in and said, I want to get a lay of the land before I start filling positions of what's needed, and they have a candidate in mind. They're going to meet with the 4 planning commissioners to have the planning commissioners have a chance, since they work so closely with the planner, that meeting is going to occur soon, and I expect that position to be filled. Once we fill that position, we've struggled in the last few months, but we'll be 97% occupied, full strength, non-police and fire positions. The fire department is at full staff at 32, but as you know, recently the board approved 2 additional positions. So those positions are obviously still open because they're not available until January of 2022 when the budget starts. And the police department remains down 5 or 6, depending on the day. Right now we're 6, but we have someone leaving in January. But then, of course, we potentially have a new person coming on. One of the things I would like the board to start thinking about, not having any suggestions tonight, not having any editorial comments about it from me, but the Williamstown Township contract is up a year from now. And that takes 2 of our officers. We charge at cost. There's no surcharge at all. It's salary, benefits, pension, the whole bit, whatever that is. That's what Williamstown Township pays. That contract's coming up. They've already reached out to us. Supervisor reached out to me to start wanting to discuss that. The board needs to think seriously about the challenges we've had with the police department and whether that's something that this township wants to continue. I'm just bringing that up tonight for something for you to ponder yourself. I want to thank the police and fire departments from Meridian Township. We hear about the great game that occurred on Saturday and the 125,000 people that were in town for the game and all the stuff that occurred after the game, and the East Lansing Police Department, the East Lansing Fire Department, and, well, Meridian Township was there assisting as well, and I want to thank our departments for that. I'm sure it was not an easy occurrence. Thank you for the update on the MDOT Grand River Project, Manager Perry. That, coupled with the bridge project, we have to be fully engaged and fully prepared for what's going to occur next year. The board has set a date of December 11th for the annual goal setting. Staff has been working on that for the last 2 weeks since that occurred. We'll be presenting the entire packet to you on December 3rd, so you'll have it 8 days in advance of your meeting. Pine Village, another thing, while you're thinking about the Williamstown Police contract, you might want to also keep in mind the Pine Village Brownfield. As you may recall, the board approved, on the recommendation of the Brownfield Authority, an interest, and that interest was tie-barred, if you remember, to the demolition. And the demolition did not occur. Of course, COVID came and things slowed down, and I don't have to tell you what happened, but the demolition did not occur. So the interest rate, the payback on the brownfield has elapsed. It's gone. One of the things that Director Clark and I have talked about is the potential to get them reinvigorated and get them going and get them demolishing, is that what if we gave them a 4-month window to come back and say, okay, we understand what happened, but if you want to get moving and get this project going, the board might consider putting back in the interest rate based on what's happened. Those discussions are happening. Pine Village seems interested in discussing that at an accelerated time rate. We'll bring that back to you. That would need to go, if that happens, it would need to go back to the Brownfield Board and then to the Township Board, whether you want to reinstitute the interest rate to get that moving. Again, just another thing for you to be thinking about. The IT assessment is underway. It's in full gear. We had our first meeting last 2 weeks ago. Farmers Market will continue through November. On Saturdays, we'll have a winter farmers market that'll continue right on past November. The local roads, we've had a great year with it. When you work in front of 650 homes, you're going to have some issues. You're going to have some questions. You're going to have site visits that you need to make. And it's just been an incredible success for us. Again, in our second year of the program, I want to thank Mr. Perry for his leadership with that. Well, there are a couple of roads streets we're not going to get to this year as planned. Those residents will be notified soon, and they will be first on the list for 2022. Our annual team building event, it should be our 9th annual, but it's only our 8th because we skipped a year because of COVID. But that will occur this Friday. All the directors will be attending a luncheon. There's not a lot you can do in the COVID era, but we're going to take a little trip south of here for a lunch. And I received information late today that CBL, owners of the mall, have come out of Chapter 11, and that's been approved. And so some good news for us in working with the mall. That's my report, Mr. Supervisor, unless you have any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Yes, Mr. Officer.
One question, I suppose I'll pose it to the manager, but I was wondering if the chief had any thoughts that he'd like to share with the board as it pertains to the Williamstown Township contract.
I don't know that he would have that tonight, because some of that, I think, would be based on where our numbers are in 4 or 5 months. Because in a meeting that we had last week, Chief Plog and his team feeler may not be the right word, but they've attracted interest from 3 or 4 people that we're talking to that are at different stages in their careers. One person relocating to the year, I won't go through all, but I think we'd be better versed on that subject for you maybe in the spring when we know where our numbers are at more. Because if we're back at close to 40, that's a different discussion than if we're at 35. Do you want more information on that tonight?
No, I was just curious if he was prepared. It's certainly understandable because it's a moving target. One thing I just wanted to add, I mean, I certainly want to be a good partner to Williamstown Township, and if we don't continue providing the service, they don't have a lot of places to turn. They could turn to the city of Williamston. I'm certain they're having the same struggles that we're having, because that's an issue across law enforcement. So, I mean, we're putting them in a difficult position. So, but I was just curious if there's things that the board should be considering specifically as it relates to that.
So as the manager said, we're currently in the process with, besides Isabella, we have 3 other potential candidates that we're looking at right now. But it's a very competitive market. There's been a lot of things that people look at what we have here at Meridian Township. It does make it an attractive place to come and work. So we're hoping that we're going to be able to attract more talent. But as the manager said, right now I'm not going to have an understanding of what I have for resources until after this academy cycle, which typically ends in December, which one of the candidates we're looking at currently will be graduating from the academy in December. And then Ms. Acker and a couple of our other candidates won't be starting the academy until January, and that puts them into that May graduation time. So that April, May, if people are successfully completing academies, and then what does that look like with people who not necessarily have sponsorships but are looking for positions and are coming out of the academy as well. So that's where we're at. I can tell you right now that the last time the contract was put out for bid, the Ingham County Sheriff's Office did not bid on the contract. I don't know if they would have interest right now, but they're struggling as well, and as well as many other law enforcement agencies around the state and nationally.
Yep. Chief, do any of those other candidates that we're looking at and speaking with, do any of them qualify for our sponsorship through the I'm sorry, I'm losing my terminology here.
Academy.
The academy. Do they qualify?
So we do have a couple of the candidates. They're currently in background, so we're not ready to bring those folks forward to make that ask yet.
Yep.
But there are people. To put things in perspective, I taught at the academy 20 years ago, and it was 30% people were sponsored, and 70% of those folks were in service putting themselves through. It has transitioned to 80-20. 80% of the candidates are sponsored, and 20% of those folks are putting themselves through. And of those 20%, the ones that are quality candidates, because you can ask any one of the staff members next door. I've asked this question to them. I'm like, do you want me to fill bodies, or do you want me to put quality people? And they want quality people. I know the board expects quality people. The police, the way Meridian Township residents have come to expect to have their police department act. And so you take 20% of the folks coming out of the academy and you try to pick the one or two that are qualified, that meet the fit for Meridian Township, that it becomes much more difficult to locate.
Yep.
So.
But my understanding and reason for that question was typically, I believe my understanding is that we're using the sponsorship through the academy as a way to diversify the force. Are any of these candidates that we're talking to, would they not be adding diversity and therefore not qualify for the sponsorship that we're doing? Because I'm just bringing it up because it's worth having a conversation if we do think there's a qualified person and we're having trouble with recruitment due to all these, circumstances beyond our control, and we're in this 80-20 environment that you spoke of with.
Yes.
If we need to be competitive, I'm just saying, could the board authorize us, if we have a good candidate, qualified candidate, as we try to get through this difficult phase, where we could create some flexibility? But I do think long-term it needs to be on diversification.
Right.
But in this immediate moment, might there be some need to just look at addressing our understaffing?
So we went from no sponsorship to, we found this terrific officer at Kohl's, and he's still with us and doing a tremendous job, to this is a great way to add diversity, you're right, to, we may need to use this most of the time. It's for diversity, but we may just need to get it for good officers because it's so competitive out there. So to answer your question, the pendulum has swung quite a ways on this. Now, I know, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Plaga, but one of the candidates that we're looking at potentially would add greatly to our diversity.
Yes, so of the three candidates that are in our background process currently, one is in the academy. The other two will need to attend an academy, and of those two, one is a minority candidate and the other is a female candidate.
Okay. Well, I'd be open to doing, if it makes a difference in recruitment, the person who's in the academy, we could do retroactive sponsorship, of course. You can always pay someone who's already gone through it if it makes a difference in the recruitment effort. And then for the other two, one of whom doesn't qualify in terms of diversity, I'd be open to putting more money into this so that we can get back somewhere near full staffing. I mean, we're getting to a pretty bad place, especially if we continue to lose officers at the rate we've been losing. We could be talking about 30 a year from now instead of looking at, getting back to the 38, 40 range. So I'm completely open to, using this more flexibly and, use it however you need to, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Clerk.
Thank you, Supervisor Starko. That was my question, comment too, for either for the manager or for the chief, is how many, if you could refresh my memory, how many recruits the board approved to sponsor, and if there's something more that the board can do to the effect of what Trustee Opsimer was saying in regards to sponsoring more people or other incentives or other things we can do to improve the strength of the workforce of our police department.
Yeah, that's a good question. And one of the things, I follow a lot with city managers across the state about what others are doing and that sort of thing. And one of the things that I'm seeing departments do is offer a bonus as well. A sign-on bonus is becoming popular for police officers. So that may be, and it's been an interesting discussion here in the last 10 minutes, because understanding maybe where the board's at of expanding the sponsorship program is an interesting concept. And also, we'll take a look at whatever we need to do. Right now, and we'll talk about this a little later, we're looking at things in my career, in my lifetime, I never thought I would entertain at all. I mean, my way of thinking in HR, and I know Trustee Sundlin and I had this conversation 3 weeks ago, my eyes are wide open on what we need to do to attract people and retain people, and that, you're right, Clerk, that may be something we have to look at.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes.
Have you seen, I'm thinking of my son in the military and how many times they relocate him, and they have a whole team that comes in and moves him and his family and all that kind of thing. Have you seen any relocation types of services provided for officers, or how, I'm just trying to think outside the box here, housing or any other kind of incentives,
Good, that's interesting as well, because as my understanding, a couple of these candidates are well out of town, in fact, out of state. And that's not something we've looked at doing. I know that that's a popular thing for hiring a director, hiring a township city manager, that sort of level, but not for a police officer or firefighter relocation. But again, we'll take all this that you're talking about tonight, cultivate it, and keep it in mind for when we get into these discussions. And we'll certainly come back to you if we find any of those things would help further our goal of not only diversity, which is number one, but filling the ranks.
Trustee Jackson?
I think Treasurer DeShane's hand was up before mine.
Well, that's all right, go ahead, I called that.
Oh, okay. So I just need to get basic information straight. Mr. Walsh suggested we were down by 6 in the police department. So refresh my memory, what's the full contingent, a full force?
Right now, we have budgeted for 41 sworn personnel.
41 sworn.
41 sworn. That includes myself. I am a sworn peace officer. I can make arrests and make traffic stops if necessary.
That's good to know, since you're the only one in here with a gun.
Yeah, we better be careful.
Well, sometimes when people when they state numbers, they don't count administration.
And
they don't?
Yeah, and I believe that we're at 36, correct me if I'm wrong, we're at 36 right now, soon to be 35, with an officer leaving in January.
So these 35 officers, 41 policemen.
And women.
And women. Excuse me.
It's one of the things we're most proud of, ma'am, is that we outpace the rest of the nation.
Thank you. And the other there are other employees in the department.
Yes, we have civilian employees. There are 9 civilian cadets that work 20 hours a week. Those are mostly college students. That's who you see. They're the face of the department when you walk in. And you need help, they're the first person to kind of direct you. Okay. And then we have a department administrative assistant, and then we have a records supervisor, which I would say 50% of that is FOIA management, and then the other 50% is making sure that we're reporting to the state appropriately our crime rates, our microdata. And then there are 2, we have 1 full-time records clerk and a part-time records clerk. And in 2022, we were able to refill a position that had been vacated. And so there'll be 2 full-time records clerk, 1 part-time records clerk, a records manager, and an admin. Those are the non-transient, I call them, because our cadets, when they graduate school, tend to move on. And
non-transient. Okay, so were these others outside of the cadets considered administrative?
Yes, they're support staff.
Okay, and so total of how many support?
4.5.
4.5, okay. Okay, I have the picture now. Thank you.
Treasurer?
Chief, when you're having a discussion, I'll ask you another question. In a typical year, how many retirements do you have? And do you have any specific numbers as to beyond the 1 January retirement, what you expect in 2022?
So the January retirement is really somebody who's seeking to move back home. It's not a retirement. It's somebody who's only been with our department a couple of years, and they're growing their family and looking to move back home. So typically we'll have 1, maybe 2. It goes in spurts. The next slated retirements are not until 2024. There's kind of a gap because we had the recession piece where we kind of pulled back the size of our department. When we hiring freeze. So I have more than 60% of our officers have less than 5 years of experience. And then I have a bunch of people that are in that 10 to 15 year range, and then there's a handful of us that are in the 20s, the 20 years of experience range. So, but the next eligible retirements are in 2024. And there are 3 in 2024 that can go.
Okay. This is an important topic. I'm glad we brought it up here tonight, and I think we should maybe have a more formal discussion at a future meeting, maybe even our next meeting, because I think it's important to let Williamstown Township know what our plans are, because if we're willing to go with these incentives, even a bonus, to attract new officers being 6 down, I think that we need to give serious consideration to terminating the Williamstown town contract. Because what we're in essence doing is paying bonuses to keep a service for Williamstown Township when we don't have full officers ourselves. So at least like to have that discussion at a future meeting, because I think we need to give them as much notice as we can. And to me, the prudent thing to do would be to discuss it, and in my estimation, we may need to terminate that contract. If we're 6 down now, going into the year, even though we've got some good candidates, not all of them are likely to come through, and even if they did, some won't start till June, May, and some of those might fall off. So this is an important discussion to have, and we need to be giving Williamstown Township heads up, at least that we're discussing terminating the contract, in my opinion.
All right, I would just comment that, the manager indicated that he is in communication with Williamstown Township, and that he was looking forward to working with the chief to come up with more information, more data, and it's not timely at this time to do that. But I think that they're probably well aware of the issue generally, and that, it's always a risk. So it won't be at the next meeting that we'll have it on agenda, but it will come up. It will be coming up. Mr. Opsman.
So just one other thing that I wanted to note on the sponsorship through the academy. So we do require that the officers pay the township back if they don't stay for the first 3 years under that. And then I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're vested in their pension at year 5, correct? I thought when we talked about it. So it creates this, in terms of retention, it creates this kind of linear trajectory of retention where you have, at some point they become vested in their pension shortly thereafter. So that's kind of the long range look at it as a retention mechanism as well. So it's not just the short-term recruitment, it's a retention mechanism.
Yeah, I don't think that our benefit package, paying, now the HSA all at once, and the full premium for health care, and about 90% of your deductible, and a 7% health care, retiree health care payment, and a 10% defined contribution payment, and a 1.75 defined benefit plan. Put all that together, benefits are not the thing that's going to get us. What's going to get us is just the number of, once we are able to sit down and show what we have. In fact, we've done an analysis. In fact, I was just talking about this to someone today. We've done an analysis that properly invested, if you come to Meridian Township with the benefits we have, the 2-tiered pension with the retiree health care, you will be a millionaire in 25 years when you retire based on proper investments and decent returns based on the program we have. So we're offering a very healthy program to our officers.
I just meant in terms of when you become vested in your pension.
Mm-hmm.
Because your pension, you have to stay for a certain number of years, otherwise you get no pension. And so I don't know if it's 5 years, but there's some point in time where they become vested, and it's after that 3 years.
For the defined contribution plan.
Yes.
Yeah. Because the defined benefit, you got to be here 25 years.
Oh, they have to stay the whole 25?
Yeah.
They don't get a fraction of it over?
I'd have to look at the individual contracts, but typically, if you don't stay 25 years, you don't earn a pension, and the same with health care. In fact, we just went through that with a firefighter who left
It's generally how it's done. In
25 and 50.
You get to stay the entire time.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the defined contribution side.
That's right, but you're
Where
correct.
You get vested in your 401k and other savings accounts like that.
Yeah, and you're correct. There is a vesting to that.
And then just one other note, as we think about Williamstown Township, so, we talk a lot about our tax base and, revenues in the township. Williamstown Township is in tremendous hardship compared to us when you look at tax base. So when you look at our tax base, 38% of that $2 billion we talk about is business tax base. They have no business sector. It's all residential. And then, of course, when you look at, providing services in rural areas like they do, like look at providing road services, their residents are having to pay for huge stretches of linear roadway and infrastructure. So their financial picture is very, very different than ours, and it's much more bleak. And so I just think we need to be cognizant of that when we think about, yes, perhaps are we subsidizing them to a degree, especially if we're spending money to recruit and to sponsorship through the academy, in addition to the cost of the officer and all that. I don't even know if we are subsidizing, but even if we were to do a fiscal look at it and determine that we were, I think we need to be conscious of the predicament that they're in, because they're in a very difficult way. When they tried to fix roads, so it took us a little less than 2 mills to fix roads, and I think this gets right at the issue. They hired the same engineering firm that Derek Perry uses, Manick Smith. It was going to take 6 mills, 3 times. And so that's the impact. Their tax base is basically a third of ours. Why? Because they have no business tax base whatsoever. It's just homes trying to pay for all the services that they need on a per capita basis. So just want to put that out there because I think it's important to think about when we look at equity and our neighbors.
It's interesting information. Okay, can we move on now?
Yep.
All right, let's go to board member reports of activities and announcements, and I'll start off by thanking our state representative, who used to be our treasurer, Julie Brixey, as well as her incredibly chief of her staff, etc., Mr. Dan Opsimer, who's our trustee, for the $225,000 that's coming for a fire truck, and we really appreciate their efforts that they put forth. Thank you. Okay, other board members, things to report, announcements? Yes, clerk.
Thank you, Supervisor Stike. I too have a thank you and shout out. One is to my staff. I was absent for a few weeks due to my mother's illness, and so really appreciate them having my back and running everything in the department. I highly appreciate them stepping up to the plate. It really means, it touches me and it really means a lot to me. Second is a shout out to the fire department. The first time my mom was taken to the hospital, they came into her apartment and the firefighter introduced himself to my mom and said, "Christine, I think I was the one that helped you out when you fell in the parking lot at the farmer's market like 15 years ago." And she looked up at him and she said, "Bless your heart. You were so kind then. I know you're going to be kind to me today." And she was just so touched by his kindness. And then she's been in and out of the hospital ever since. She went back to the hospital tonight, and yesterday she was in the hospital, and they were transporting her back to the Willows, and she looked up at me and she said, "Can you get the township to bring their fire truck or their ambulance and their firemen, because they're the nicest. They're the nicest people out of everyone. And that ambulance, riding in the township ambulance is like riding on a cloud of feathers." So I just wanted to pass along how appreciative my mother is of the care and how appreciative I am and the care that our township EMS has provided my mom, and I'm sure that they provide that for all of our residents in the township. And that's my report, because other than basically being there for my mom, I haven't been around much, and my apologies, and I thank you for your understanding for my absence at the last board meeting.
Chief Hamill's here, and I'm sure that was gold to his ears. Other board members? Yes, Treasurer.
Thank you. On the 20th of November, I attended the November CATA board meeting. Good news for CATA is they resumed almost full service to the MSU campus, and their ridership has gone up. The students are riding the bus in approximately the same numbers they were in past years. It's paratransit, like our Meridian Ray ride numbers are getting stronger, and even their fixed route service numbers are increasing. Numbers fell off sharply a year ago by 80 or 90%, and they're expecting it to take 2 or 3 years for the numbers to return to their pre-COVID levels. This Thursday with Trustee Sunland, we'll be attending the November meeting of our Economic Development Corporation here in this meeting at 7:30. And then lastly, on page 43 of your packet, you'll see our placement of delinquent special assessments, utilities, and other bills on the tax roll. State law allows us to do that. The advantage of doing it is it becomes a tax lien if those matters don't get paid. I look back, and in 2020 and 2019, the numbers were approximately the same as you was looking at this year. So good news is that residents are holding their own. These delinquent numbers have not spiked as many of us feared would happen with the pandemic. So that's my report. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else? Yes, Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. I missed our last Groundwater Management Board meeting, but I do know that we have a work group meeting coming up on Monday. It's a 3-hour work group to look at and develop more tangible priorities for that group. So I think that'll be really great. Director Perry's been very involved, and I will be able to attend at least 2 hours of that meeting. Environmental Commission has been exceptionally busy. They wanted to make sure that the board and the manager knew that the letter and the brochure that went out to all of the residents that live adjacent to a wetland has had a lot of positive feedback. So they've gotten several calls expressing their positivity, and that there was very educational, specifically to the buffers, that there was a lot of unknown when it comes to buffers around the wetlands. So I think that's been a really successful approach to part of our educational campaign. I know that we spent, it's in our bills, we spent some funding to put that out, so that's really exciting. Other thing they've been working, this is a really passionate and knowledgeable group of individuals that attend so many meetings that I cannot attend, and it's amazing the amount of education and knowledge that comes into this group. But some of the things that they're working on specifically is the energy team is examining solar options for the appropriation for additional solar in Meridian. Just like Hazlitt Middle School, our other green grant is at the Radmore Montessori School, and they'll be presenting at our Environmental Commission tomorrow. And I will invite them to come to the board so we can hear what they've been doing as well. The other thing is the Environmental Commission is partnering with Meridian Cares as a coat drive on November 20th at the Marketplace on the Green. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members have reports? I will also mention that yesterday was the beginning of Native American Heritage Month, and I don't have a resolution this time, but I will at least mention it. Native American Heritage Month. Okay, we'll now move on to the approval of the agenda. Mr. Opserman.
I move to approve the agenda.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Wazitsky. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have an agenda. We now come to the consent agenda. It has 4 item areas. Communications, minutes of the October 19, 2021 regular meeting, our bills, and the placement of delinquent special assessments, delinquent utilities, delinquent false alarms, unpaid mowing, and code violations and miscellaneous fees on the winter tax roll for 2021, which was mentioned by the treasurer a little while ago. Is there a motion? Treasurer.
I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Okay, supported by Trustee Jackson. Any need to look at the minutes or anything? All right.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Ms. Wazitsky.
This might be an ignorant question, but I was looking at the delinquent false alarms, and I noticed that there's different payments or different, I guess, violation or fees on different individual entities, and I didn't know why that was. Manager or chief.
So false alarms start out as you get your first one free. And then we have a fee that progresses more expensive the more false alarms we have. And then if you don't pay them in a timely manner, then there's delinquency fees that go on top of those. So if we have problem properties. And typically we try to be understanding and work with people, especially if they have new alarm companies and they set up a new alarm system. Those are typically the folks that we have problems with. And we do give them a little bit of grace, but if they continue not to solve the problem and we continue to have officers responding to these false alarms, we do send billings, and then if they don't pay their bills, we do tack on delinquency fees.
That's helpful, thank you.
All right. In other words, it's an incentive not to be false in your life. Yes, Ms. Jackson.
Could I ask the chief, so the facility that owns the alarm pays the fee?
Not the monitoring company, the property owner.
The property owner
The property owner pays the fee.
pays the fee?
Yes.
Okay.
And we have waived fees before. Thunderstorms is an excellent example of when false alarms, we get inundated with, we have high winds and thunder, it can set off some alarms, and we do understand that happens. And we appreciate alarms, especially when they work the way they're designed. So, but there's also people who the alarm goes off and the officers know, okay. And that can be dangerous too, because it breeds in complacency. And if I respond 10 times to a location and that 11th time it actually is being broken into, and an officer is complacent because they think it's another false alarm, that makes it a dangerous situation.
Is there a criminal offense?
No, it's a civil
for the-
matter. It's an ordinance
Okay.
with a fee schedule.
Okay.
A wise contractor who is working with an alarm company would have provisions in their contract to deal with who paid for false alarms, based on their causation, I'm sure. And we don't want to get into the little girl who cried wolf situations, which is what we're trying to do.
I see.
I updated that, there's little girls. I'm trying, anyway, okay. Anything else before we vote on the consent agenda? All right, we need a vote then, clerk.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee Osmer?
Yes.
Trustee Sumlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Stajka?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. No questions for attorney, no hearings. We're now moving on to our action items. The first one is rezoning number 21-070-5114, Joe Don Drive. Rezone north half of property from RCC, mobile family, maximum of 34 dwelling units per acre, to RB, single family, high density. Introduction. This is an option for introduction. Mr. Officer.
I move to adopt a resolution approving the introduction rezoning number 21070 to rezone the north half of an approximately .42 acre parcel located at 5114 Jodown Drive from RCC multifamily maximum 34 dwelling units per acre to RB single family high density.
Support.
Supported by Ms. Wazinski. Any discussion, Mr. Officer?
Just simply that this is a parcel that was upzoned for purposes of single-family housing, and now we are dezoning it as condition of the previously approved rezoning. And it will bring some more single-family housing stock to a neighborhood in need of it, and hopefully be one small piece towards reopening this elementary school in the neighborhood at some point.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, we need a vote.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee Osmer?
Yes.
Trustee Sumlin?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Stajka?
Yes,
And Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Motion carries 7-0.
thank you. Our other action item is 2022 board meeting schedule resolution. Using last year's pattern and the various holidays and other things like elections that come about, it proposed a calendar with the help of Ms. Michelle in Mr. Walsh's office, and would propose that we adopt it. Is there a motion? Yes, Mr. Treasurer.
I move to adopt the 2022 Township Board meeting schedule.
Support.
Ms. Jackson. Anybody have anything they want to discuss as far as changing it or anything like that? We can always do it if we have to later on, once realities come up.
It is worth noting that we do have our 2 months with 3 meetings, because we're doing our Township Board and Commissions meeting in January, and then our school districts and local governments in March.
Yeah, which is our historical pattern.
Yes.
And without COVID, hopefully these will go off, or at least reduce COVID, I should say. Go off as we planned, okay? Then we need a vote. I guess we don't need a formal, we can just do this by voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a schedule. We now go to our discussion items, and the first one is the Town Hall Room AV upgrades. And do we have something we're going to hear about this?
This summer was I think the beginning of the discussions on making additional AV changes to this room that we are in right now. With COVID, it uncovered a lot of need for multimedia usage, either in a virtual or a hybrid sense. We have done very well to accommodate those needs in a temporary situation. Thank you to our IT department and communications department for doing that. But it is not a long-term solution. We have multiple laptops and webcams and a phone there. That there are different solutions that we could be looking at. So when we opened that project idea, some other ideas came about. Maybe we need more monitors, maybe we need built-ins into the dais, and sky's the limit on some ideas. The IT department and communications department reached out to some companies to see what kind of projects other municipalities and government buildings are doing. And this is a very hot commodity right now, a lot of different projects happening. We received 2 proposals, but we met with 3 different companies. One declined to provide a proposal. I don't know if it was the distance or just the size of the project. What we are proposing, if you wish to move forward with the additional upgrades, would be to work with Smart Offices, Smart Homes out of Mason to add additional monitors, new microphones, some built-in outlets to the dais, individual monitors for each of you to see what's on the screen. Our cart before you, I'm very concerned that it's going to be damaged being rolled down the hallway for many, many meetings. So a solution to that would be to add 2 monitors in the ceiling for you as well as a different room setup when we're in a quad square you could see from all directions, and then individual monitors at the table on low profile stands, not built in. We initially thought about sky's the limit, let's get new furniture and go from there, but that's really not that feasible. That's a much larger and a long-term project, and with the cabling of our camera equipment, that opens up a whole can of worms with rewiring everything that's below that desk. So this is a modest proposal for what we could propose for this room. It is the proposal that we would like to go with is $54,000, and that's the AV upgrades. Some electrical would be required to add outlets for additional monitors. We also would like some on both ends of the room. We could have agendas or bulletins for people who are in the audience. And then the quad monitors and the dais monitors would show the agenda or the presentations so that everyone can see the same screen. One of our biggest needs is a new multimedia lectern. This is a very small lectern and does not meet the needs that we need for this room, let alone the production for home TV. Right now, the document camera something's wrong, the signal's not even getting to us. So we're using a camera to zoom in on the presentation to show what's on the screen. So like I said, although it works, we've made some solutions on the fly, we definitely would like to address long-term solution. When I mentioned virtual and hybrid, we are aware that those situations may not continue for Open Meetings Act moving forward in 2022, but this room is utilized in multiple different ways by multiple different groups, so we would like to accommodate as many multimedia usages as we can. One thing I forgot to mention is a mobile cart. So I don't know if you're aware, there is a projector screen in the ceiling behind you. It is broken, does not work. So we are looking at a larger mobile cart for those situations when someone needs a large projector-like screen for it to be rolled out from this room instead of all the way down to the hall from the studio where more damage could be done. So we would like to hear your thoughts. With the built-ins on the dais, it would be new microphones that are shorter, low profile, and built-in to the desk. I'd like to see less real estate, less items on the table if possible to help, so you guys can use the dais to your own needs. The monitor, like I said, low profile stands can be removed because I know we use this room for elections, for example, and those things can be removed. And the outlets for a charging station, USB, and an outlet where you could connect your, I think it was HDMI, where you can connect your own laptop to have a dual screen or show your screen larger from your iPad, for example. So I'm open to any questions or address anything you'd like to, but this is not a budgeted project, so that's why we're here before you today. There is funds available in the previous cable TV fund. A lot of the funding from that account is from PEG fees and franchise fees, and PEG is used for this type of situation, that its infrastructure changes for AV type equipment.
Township manager, yes?
Just real quickly, on the funding part of that, which is always an important piece of any project, when we, back in 2019, when we moved the cable to the general fund and went through all of that, we left the cable fund, which was at that time just over $300,000, we left it as a separate fund to fund future projects. So this is clearly separate from the general fund, and it has approximately $235,000 in it.
On the funding, I have a quick question. The memo talks about 54,000, then it says 64,000. Does that include the 54?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a
yes.
separate 64?
No.
Okay.
With the electrical work that's necessary, we are getting proposals and quotes for electric, for if we want 2 monitors over here and there. The company we're selecting doesn't do that kind of AC power. And then it is compatible to work with our home TV equipment, so we send the signal to us, but we don't have the capability of sending the signal down here 2-way, and that would help in a virtual or hybrid situation. So there is some engineering to combine the two systems. So when I come back to you, I will have the solid number of all of the work, but right now it's a rough estimate of total for all of that for 64.
Yeah, I just didn't want to think it was 54 plus 64. That's
No.
it. Right. Mr. Opsmer.
So, Ms. Yates, included in all of this, has there been conversations around conference call technology and lines?
So I will talk to our IT director in just a moment. The system that they're proposing we use is for audio as well, so that we made it very clear when we spoke with the company that we want to be able to have calls, Zoom in this room, and be able to feed it back or vice versa from the control room. So I believe so, but I will double check that.
Okay, I've just been been in the town hall room for a couple of meetings in which multiple participants were trying to phone in, and we didn't have, just a simple hard landline connected conference call machine. And user friendliness is usually important because whoever's coming to the meeting is just whoever's coming to the meeting, right? You don't
Right.
necessarily have someone on site that knows how to work it. So user friendliness and a simple conference call line is just something that also comes to mind for just kind of the everyday kind of ad hoc purpose of the room.
Of course, I'll double check that.
Before calling on Ms. Jackson, who had her hand next, has there been any thought about, occasionally we have the overflow where we end up at the central fire station room, and any thought about is there any need to do anything there in order to make sure that it can be used effectively?
That was not a part of this project. That was not something we talked about.
That's fine. That's the answer, I wanted to know. Right, Ms. Jackson?
What comes first to my mind is the question as to whether or not there's a need to, or any planning that you've already done to coordinate these kinds of the changes involved in this room and the other kinds of IT changes that are apparently on the table and being studied.
I did ask Manager Walsh and Director Gives that that type of situation isn't a part of that IT infrastructure project. What we're proposing today is separate from the IT project.
Okay, but there doesn't need to be any kind of coordination in terms of the IT capacity and this capability?
Stephen, can you add to that, please?
Time for the red mask.
There you go. Actually, the IT assessment that's ongoing right now is a focus on IT infrastructure that we currently have in place. Our servers, our workstations, our networks, and all those pieces. And while there are network components that will be evaluated and will impact our capabilities in this room, this project is really focused on enhancing the connections between this room and our studio down the hall, and making sure that all the fantastic things they can do back there can make its way out here. And if there's a phone call or many phone calls that need to be bridged in here, they can do that and televise it. I'll talk to Trustee Opsimer a little bit about what he wants, but it sounds like that phone actually was purchased for this room right here. That is a fantastic conference phone. That'll remain here, so people who want to have just conference phone capability in this room or any of our smaller conference rooms, that's already there, built into the phone system. And yes, Brandy's project is going to allow her to leverage and merge all of these systems together.
Okay.
The IT assessment is going to focus on getting our back-end infrastructure back in good shape. And there will be a little bit of overlap, but their focus is really a completely different arena.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Wozinski.
One question, Ms. Yates. So I like the idea of having more opportunity to see things. This is even difficult for me to see as I tend to get older. And I assume as our communications expert, have we made the consideration of all ADA compliant? Can we get the ability for closed caption and or when we have conference calls, do we have that types of capabilities for our residents and or our commissioners that might need that?
I will verify, but yes, that is always the forefront of our mind. The monitors, the system that controls the monitors, it's a very robust system where we could have different monitors show different things. We can have it all show the same thing and utilize them other than this meeting setting, for example. But I will verify the closed captioning and accessibility.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think it was, the clerk was next, I think.
Thank you, Supervisor Stenka. That was my question as well for Ms. Yates, was accessibility. One, in regards to the ease of any board members or commissioners in regard to their setup here, what their needs would be for, right now I've got to go under the desk and plug my laptop in. I couldn't imagine like my mom doing that, for instance. There's no way that's going to happen. So you said it. So just will those units be on top, the USB, the outlet, all that kind of thing?
Yes, we would have covered units that are drilled into the top, so you do not have to go under the dais. There's a lot going on down there. You said it very kindly. And they have the company which we would like to engage with. They have things to hide the things that are not necessary for you to see under the dais and help clean up all that wiring that is under there.
Okay, and then the same question goes for the podium. If we were to have anyone address the board or commission in regards to wheelchair, being able to pull up and address the board in that kind of manner. I'm assuming that that's being considered as well.
Yes, it is. And the connection between, we'll also have some built-ins in this staff table as well for the capability of the microphone. Obviously, it's killing me seeing all of these wires everywhere.
Me too, I'm with you.
So allowing the staff table to also have built-ins and be able to hide the wiring. They have a low-profile raceway is what they have proposed in their proposal that connects the two with, and it's ADA compliant, accessible covering of the little aisleway there between the dais and the staff table.
Okay, good. And then two more questions. One is just clarifying, did I hear correctly that if there were a meeting in here and people were to call via the phone, that it could go back and forth through home TV if needed on the channel, from there to here, and the speakers if needed, and then from here to there, or from outside as well.
A combination of all of that. We have discussed having kind of call-in shows here, for example, and that capability in this room is not there. And being able to, if hybrid meetings in the future continued and taking calls from the public or on Zoom or a phone call, that would be very difficult in the current setup, and we are looking at the proposal, the equipment they are proposing would allow for that.
Thank you. Not to call Derek out or anything, but he seems to have larger public forum type meetings where several people come, and there may be instances where people aren't able to come, so I think that would be a benefit to them. And then my last question is I know you have the one fail-safe camera up there if you need it. Are there additional cameras going in here? I know you talked about the monitors in the ceiling. Are there additional cameras as well?
We are not at this time proposing additional robotic cameras. This one was temporarily was failing at one point, but I think it was a connection issue, and we have fixed that since. With our robust home TV internship program, there is still a need for camera operators. 2 of them are in here right now, so we don't want to remove that. But in the future, that is something on our 5-year equipment plan. Maybe the additional of ceiling robotic cameras would be necessary for this room in the future.
Thank you for your leadership on this. Appreciate it.
I think the treasurer was this.
Yes, question about these monitors that are going to sit here on the dais. They're portable, is that correct?
That is correct. So it is a low profile stand that can be adjusted flat completely or towards you. Right now they're proposing a 22-inch, which I believe is a little too big, but they are looking at other options, 15 or 16. The only issue with that is it gets into special ordering, which may drive up cost, as well as it's more of a tablet when you get smaller, and the ports that would be available to work with the system may not be there. So I did ask them. I thought 22 was a little large, but with the low profile monitors, we can move them, and the stands are adjustable as well.
Okay, would they be available to the other boards and commissions as well?
Yes, we want to make sure that every board and commission has the same access to this equipment as the board.
Actually, these days, 22 inches is not that big, particularly if you're used to 2 monitors, as most of us are from work. The question is, if you're plugging, look around the table here, we have 2 of the original iPads that Stephen rolled out a couple years ago when we went electronic, but there are now 3, 4 laptops here as well. So we'll need to take that into account. Not everyone is still using the original iPad.
So that is why I requested that in their proposal they have a plug-in option that's in the outlet, so it will be power, USB, and a function, I think HDMI, or I can't remember the port actually, that will connect your own devices to the monitor, so it will be larger. And eventually, I know Clerk Guthrie has discussed software that you could vote at your seat, for example. So those kind of things would be utilized for those monitors in the future.
And while we're discussing software, do we have having discussions about software that would help people watching the board meetings from home to follow along in the packet closer? Some boards do allow that scrolling as the board meeting moves along, that electronic packet scrolls as well.
So that's not a part of this, but yes, definitely there's a lot of options we can do to expand, not only in this room for future viewers who are not in the room, but yes, something we can definitely discuss. I'm completely on board with streamlining processes and making it easier.
Certainly. We have a lot of people that watch these meetings. We want to make it as easy as possible to follow the meeting, particularly if hopefully they haven't sat through the whole meeting. They've joined for a certain point to know where we're at on the agenda. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Other board members, ideas, comments, thoughts? I'm a great Jerry Seinfeld fan, and can we have mini fridges and hammocks, like George did. Never mind.
I'm a Seinfeld fan myself. I got the reference.
Okay. Back to, you know, I don't want to follow up anything you're doing now or cause additional anguish, but for example, the Corridor Improvement Authority only meets at the fire station, so we need to give some thought to being able to do some of this with regard to them, and if at some point we want to do any televising of that with regard to that. And this board has met there too on occasion too, so we need to look at that as our next phase, so to speak, perhaps.
Of course, thank you.
I guess we're on time delay there. We can all hear that, Mr. Okay, there we go.
It's all gone south since the Seinfeld reference.
Wanted to hear that
That's it.
again.
No. Thank you. Anything else for? Yes.
Just one more. So, in terms of the number of electrical outlets in this room, have you given any thought to increasing the number?
I think when I contact the electrician for proposals, I will bring that up to see as an analysis. Yes, that's a great point.
Sometimes I've been in the room on that side and start to run out of power as well. So that might be more helpful for some of our visitors.
Of course, thank you.
Or when we set up at the square. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm.
Election room.
Or as a lecture room. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. We'll
Thank
now
you.
move on to our next discussion item, which is the township signage, and I believe Mr. Schmidt will probably be talking to us about that. Yes, no? No, Mr. Perry. Oh,
Wrong
okay.
kind of signage, actually.
Oh, okay, different kind of signage, got it.
At some point, Mr. Schmidt will be before the board talking about the sign ordinance.
Yeah, we're going to hook them tonight.
Yeah, right.
We're
Got
going to
it.
hook the conversations tonight.
Oh, yeah, these are the famous signs. Okay, got it.
Yeah, the famous signs, yes.
The CIA is after these, they want these. Yeah.
I'm going to try to bring up an image here. There it is. So, as part of your 2021 goals, the Township Board wanted us to pursue gateway signs, which essentially welcome to Meridian Township kind of sign, and also replace the entrance signs here to the municipal building. I know everyone looks at those to see how updated they are and all the great information on there. I mean, I'm being a little facetious. You really can't read them. They're kind of a square. I mean, I'm not even sure what's on them currently. So we know they definitely need to be updated and replaced. So as part of that, we contracted with Corbin Design. And again, what came out of that process is before you. It should look familiar. In the 6-month update, this what was presented to the Township Board as the update. At that time, there was a question about, can we keep the tail? We really like the tail on the swoosh. And they were able to accommodate that, so that's been incorporated there. No guarantees that it won't get snapped off at some point, but you know, we try to stick with the brand standard, so they've been able to incorporate that. So there's multiple sign types. There's a large municipal campus ID sign that does have a changeable message board sign. Again, we're not looking for a Las Vegas flashing effect, but a lot of these signs can do slow transitions, different pictures and things. So I think it would be a very nice amenity for the building to be able to message some of that. Maybe we'd be able to move away from some of those basically the vinyl kind of, signs that we put up with the T-posts, And again, they're effective, but I think we can do better with maybe something like this. Also, there's times where we're doing things like hydrant flushing. Again, it'd be nice to have those messages up there to be able to drive people back to the website to say, hey, if you want more details on that, go to the website and update that map. So we're looking to do one of those. There would be a similar one actually on Central Park Drive. It wouldn't have the message board sign unless the board really felt that it makes sense to do 2 of those. And then there's the rendering of the city welcome sign, and those will be located on the 4 kind of, compass locations. 2 on Grand River on the east and west boundaries, 1 on North Marsh, and then one at south at Jolly as close as possible. We'd like to move forward with the municipal complex signs because we own the property. It's easy for us to get going on this project. We are struggling with some of the acquisition on the welcome sign, so that's going to take us a little longer. But again, I want to make sure the board's on board with the concept plan. And then we also have identification signs and wayfinding signs for the campus itself. So a lot of times people will pull in here, and you can see them. They'll come kind of the center area, and they'll just kind of do one of these and one of these. You know, they just don't know where to go, you know. And some of this wayfinding sign will help with that. And then there's also some signs for the park system. So Luann Maisner, Director Maisner, was involved with that, and that's been a goal of the Parks Commission to kind of upgrade their park signage too. So we incorporated it all into one big plan. So it does, you know, if you go to a park, the sign's going to look very similar to a municipal complex sign, and really carry through the branding, weave that through all the signs. So really tonight, I wanted to refresh your memories on the signs and make sure that this still is a goal of the Township Board, and if so, we're going to proceed with bidding and get some real-world costs on these things and try to move forward with some installations.
Okay, the city welcome signs are definitely something that the Corridor Improvement Authority has been after for some time. Mr. Opsmer, you had your hand.
Yeah, so Manager Perry, the focus has obviously been on the welcoming signs on the boundaries of the township as you enter our boundaries east, west, north, south, and then also kind of the municipal complex here and the historical village. But what would be the total timeline if we're looking at wayfinding signage within various complexes, but also the parks? And Land Preservation has been talking about this, and I don't know if they've spoken to you, but they've talked about signage updates. I see examples here for some of our parks as well. So how broad is the scope, and what's the timeline for accomplishing that scope?
Well, the scope really can be, and the timeline is really going to be dictated by the board and as part of the budgeting process. So now that we have, I guess, our master plan on what the sign should look like, we now can start proceeding with some of that budgeting to say, you know, we would like to accomplish this in 5 years, or maybe this is more of a 10-year kind of thing. And the Parks Commission can look at that to say, you know what, yeah, maybe it is going to take us 7 years to get through all the park system, that kind of thing, with the funding that they have available. But from the welcome signage and the municipal complex signage and the wayfinding, that really could be accomplished within, you know, 12 to 18 months once we move forward with this. It's the only hesitation I have is just with everything else is, you know, manufacturers having availability, getting the raw materials that they need to fabricate these. You know, those will create some delays. But our first step really is to work with Corbin Design, get this thing bid out, and get some real world numbers so we know.
And I'm sorry, Manager Walsh, have we budgeted anything for this technically?
We have not.
Okay.
We're prepared in our general fund to be able to support whatever the board moves forward with.
Yeah.
My observation in all this is, just real quickly, that we have got to replace the 2 township signs on this building. I mean, they are hideous. I mean, first of all, you can't read them. You don't even know they're there. We don't even identify, and we're not proud enough to even identify our own building. And it really needs to happen, and with all speed ahead, to at least put those 2 up as soon as possible and identify and be a little prouder of our community and our building.
And did we, the one thing that comes to mind, in addition to the municipal complex as more of an immediate need, just in terms of ensuring, if we were going to do these digital boards, was there any thought given to putting one at the farmer's market? Because that is one that actually likes to advertise its schedule, and it has an irregular schedule, right?
I really, if you look down there at the large municipal park identification sign, I think you probably could, right now it says Central Park South, but you probably could incorporate some type of message board sign. And I know they have started utilizing the vinyl banners at the farmer's market to advertise too. So yeah, I don't see any reason why you could not do something like that there.
Yeah, I think if the board decides to go with a message sign, to your point, Trustee Opsimer, that perhaps the and this is not my bailiwick, this is just an observation, that it would be better for the message sign not to be on our campus, but to be in front of the farmer's market I think it would be viewed a lot easier by vehicular traffic and pedestrians if it's on there and not one. I don't know that we need two right next to each other.
Yeah.
Our original concept would be to have one on Marsh Road for the Marsh Road traffic, have that one there. This one wouldn't have the sign, but then incorporating one on the farmer's market, then we would have two, basically to get north, south, east, west traffic.
Okay. I mean, obviously the traffic's great around Marsh Road, but the traffic counts at the fire station would be interesting too, because we do the vinyl signage for the farmer's market at the fire station too. But, I mean, I certainly am willing to proceed, as quickly as staff can. Obviously, this is going to be, a multi-year endeavor. So, but I don't see any point in slowing staff down. I just think we should get economy of scale and do it in a phased approach that makes sense. If we're going to do the complex, just do all the wayfinding and everything for the immediate complex here. Get it all done at once, because getting the contractors on site, there's economy of scale. Just getting them here, that next sign doesn't cost nearly as much. And see if we can negotiate some of these unit costs down through some method like that. Same with like the parks. If we're going to do wayfinding inside of a park, let's do the park, and let's move through methodically like that. And then, of course, for the welcoming signs, that's a $100,000 project alone if we're going to do 4 welcoming signs on the north, south, east, and west of the township. So, but I think priority would be this complex and, the 4 entrances to the community, but I don't see any reason why we should prolong your timeline and your staff's timeline in getting it implemented just to save, some money over time. So that would be my take on the fiscal component.
Just quickly, I want to mention, if we do go with the announcement type signs with the writing, I don't know why corporations think that, our manufacturers think the red is readable. If you look at the Okemos High School, the red is very unreadable. If you look at the Hazlitt, which has a white or yellow type writing, it's very readable, so keep that in mind. Mr. Deshane.
Thank you. I agree with Trustee Oppenheimer that we ought to think of doing these in bulk, perhaps, and getting better prices. While I can see 2A for Marsh Road, you can make an argument that should be on Central Park as well, because I would think our number of people entering Town Hall from Central Park Drive versus the Marsh Road is significantly higher coming in on Central Park Drive. And so while the one on Marsh Road would provide some information, people coming in to the complex just so outnumber the ones that are just driving by. It would be interesting to see what it would cost if we were looking at 2 or 3 of those. I like also the idea of one at the farmer's market. They're going to have unique signing requirements there as well with the different vendors and so forth. They're really stunning signs. They're going to look great. They're going to help people to find their way. They're going to allow us to get our message out about events and what's happening in the township. So I'll be curious to see what kind of prices we get back from these, to see what they're going to cost. They could have gone up considerably, maybe not, particularly if we're looking at buying 1 or more in quantity. But anyway, this is exciting. I agree with the manager. We need to do something this year with the municipal building. Our signs are really pathetic.
Yes, Trustee Jackson.
I'd like to ask Mr. Schmidt if he has looked at the dimensions and the design of these signs to determine how they fit with our current sign policies.
I will say before he steps up that 25 square feet is a requirement, and we did adjust that for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ditto?
So, I haven't done a deep dive into these. We did, Manager Perry and I did talk about general parameters sort of early on in my tenure here. frankly, my recommendation in the sign ordinance is going to be to exempt township-sponsored signage. The current ordinance partially does already, and municipalities throughout the state go back and forth on this issue, but as a government agency, we serve a different purpose than an advertising sign. We are spreading information that is of broad social importance. So that is generally how most churches and schools justify sort of their digital change of message signs, and I will be recommending that the township do the same when we get there. But to the point, largely, there's probably a couple of tweaks here and there, but largely these signs should meet our current standards in most places throughout the community.
Thank you.
Good question. Anyone else? Thoughts, questions? Yes, clerk.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Supervisor Stika. I agree with Treasurer DeShane and Trustee Opsimer in regards to the large message board sign at Marsh and Central Park and at the farmers market. I would like to see staff not have to put up those vinyl signs everywhere and save their time from having to go out and put up these signs. For greater staff efficiency and for greater communication, I could see this, if the police or if the fire department or if there's anything that needs to go out there in regards to, water or sewer, any kind of alert thing. And then in addition with the sign at the marketplace, the number of things that I know Director Maisner is looking at scheduling over there that's outside the scope of the farmers market as a gathering place for the community. I could see a message board there as well. So yeah, I too am interested in the cost. I'm sure that those have risen, and the project could get delayed depending on materials and all that kind of thing. So I do have a couple of questions in regards to signs at the land preservation. Are the signs that are at the land preservation, are those paid for by the land preservation millage, or the millage doesn't cover that and that's covered under the general fund?
The signs that would be at the land preservation sites would be paid for, have been and would be paid for out of the land preservation fund.
So new signs there would be paid for out of the land preservation fund too?
Correct.
Okay. Yep. And then my other question is, what would the cost be if land preservation were to change its name, or if Home TV Studios were to move to the mall, or Central Park were to change its name to something else? Like, I'm assuming that those are low, easy, fixed costs, but just out of curiosity, if there was an answer that they could give, what that cost would be.
Sure. Yeah, we would have to ask the manufacturer what it would take to modify a sign, let's say if something was relocated. The easy answer is you can't move anywhere. You just have to stick with it. But we know that's not the reality, right? So, yeah.
Right.
But all signs can be modified.
Yeah, I don't see public works on that one sign there. You don't want anyone to find you there, Derek. No, these look great. Thank you. I really appreciate your leadership on this.
All right, other board members? Dan?
So just one question as a clarification on the unit cost. So when we're looking at these signs, some are clearly intended to just be one-sided signs, right? The wayfinding signs, et cetera. Which signs are two-sided as they're quoted and bid here on the unit page?
If you look in the detail plan, we'd have to pull that out, and it does indicate which ones are double-sided. The campus identification signs, those are double-sided. The city welcome signs the main logo is as you approach the community. We have talked about, do you want like a message saying thank you for visiting Meridian Township or something like that, but in theory, it would just be a blue blank face on it, but we could do some type of, message on that. A lot of the other smaller signs, some of them are double-sided. Let's say like a park sign, if it makes sense as you're approaching the road to see it from two directions, it would be both-sided. It really is site sensitive.
Okay.
And
So some of these, like
pricing-
the Hartridge Park sign, that might only be quoted for one side. We're not sure right now. So some of these costs might be higher than what we're looking at for site-specific.
Correct.
If it's being put perpendicular to the roadway, and we need a two-sided sign for north and southbound traffic or east-west.
Absolutely correct. So we did a site plan for the municipal campus, and then the park signs are pretty, I would say, general, because again, those are going to be very site-specific depending on how the access drive is, positioned on the road and that kind of thing. But we did request that they give us some ballpark pricing, so we had at least knew a magnitude of what the cost would be.
Okay.
I do like the idea of the backside of the welcoming sign saying something like, thank you from Meridian or for visiting Meridian. Or something.
Actually,
A prime community, thank you for visiting a prime community.
yes, thank you for visiting a prime community. That's what kind of came
Hey,
out of
I
our
like
core
that.
heart.
That's why
Yes.
you're in communication.
Yes. Yeah, the ladies came up with that. I was like, yeah, never mind.
Okay, anyone else? Think you got good information from us, and we're really looking forward to this. Pretty exciting.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much.
Now is it, Mr. Schmidt?
Sorry, one quick note for Deputy Manager Perry, if I could, real quick. So if you could get with Luann Maisner, please, get with the Director for Parks, because Land Pres has been talking about signage, and they might be in the process of doing some signage right now, because we've had issues with one preserve in particular. So just check with them and see, because they might be able to dovetail into this now, and we don't waste resources.
There you go.
And for everyone's, I guess, information, Director Maisner was part of kind of our internal group.
Okay.
And so she's well aware of all of this and the parks and everything. In fact, she needs to actually get a couple park signs for some of their most recent projects, so.
And I like that parks were branded with the green signs. I got the branding.
Okay, Mr. Schmidt. Next item is mixed-use plan, unit development, ordinance update.
Thank you very much. So I'll be brief. At the last meeting, the Township Board asked for a couple of changes and also asked for the Planning Commission's input on sort of this final draft. The Planning Commission reviewed the matter at their meeting last week and wholeheartedly support the changes and are ready to have this implemented. So the last two changes really that were made at the request of the board from the last meeting was inclusion of intent language with each of the amenities, sort of how I explained things at the meeting that everyone seemed to agree with. So we've included that language, and then there was discussion with respect to trying to push towards the top tier amenities. And so what we've done is we've actually required that every project that needs 4 amenities or more has to include a top tier amenity. I think the thinking behind this was, rather than limit the tier 2, because at that point then the tier 1 and the tier 2 are essentially the same, force someone to simply go to the top tier right from the beginning, and then let them pick up their other points however the math falls. Certainly we could change it either direction, and I'm prepared to do so if the board desires, but that's where we're at this point. We're pretty happy with where we've gotten, and it's already gotten me to thinking how we address some other ordinance issues with this framework. So I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point.
Okay, well, it seems to me for our discussion purposes, as we want to be moving this towards an actual action item in the future, we're down to that last issue you just brought up. Where do we want to go? Do we want to force them into one of the top tiers or not? Mr. Opsmer.
So I'm not going to express an opinion. I'm just going to go through kind of the math as I was, because I read the memo and I like it. I'm okay with it either way, personally. But like we talked about, they're likely going to need 6 to 8 points based on variance requests and to get the density bonus, which is 4 points. And so if they get 1 point for that, what do we call that low tier? The 1 point, if they only can get 1 point from the bottom tier of amenities, So then they're down to needing 5 to 7, and they'd have to use 1 in the top 3. So just when we run into those situations where they need 7 or 8 points, the way that it's currently structured with making them go to tier 1, they'll go to tier 1 and do 1 of them, at least based on how the ordinance pushes them. We could always push them to do a second, 3-point amenity if we tried to. But if we limited the 2-point amenities at just limiting them to only being able to utilize 1, then they can only get 3 points from those 2 tiers, and they might have to actually do 2 of the 3-point amenities. So that's kind of the trade-off, as I saw it, as certain situations, we might be able to require them to do a second. They might have to do the art and a vertical stacking, or they might have to meet the 25% non-residential and public art. So we might get a combination of the 2 the other way, but either way, we ensure that they do 1 of the 3-point amenities, right? So that was the kind of pro and con analysis that I did.
Okay. Ms. Wazinski?
So that was helpful, Trustee Opsimer. So my question was, so if a minimum of 4, we're requiring 3, is there any additional incentive for doing additional amenity points? So that we,
So unless.
Can we maximize?
Unless it's required, I don't anticipate someone's going to do amenities just to do amenities. I think, and I went through a similar, thought process as Trustee Opsimer did. Okay, this project, is going to need this and this and this. I think and putting on my, hat of trying to encourage good development a little bit here, those top tier amenities are big asks for the vast majority of projects. The 1% for art has the potential to be well over a 6-figure ask for a project. So it's good that we require 1, but my concern is limiting some of the design items in the tier 2, where we might get a better project if someone does 3 or 4 of the tier 2s and then just takes their top tier 1 and moves on with it. But I also think, I've already shared this ordinance with one potential developer, and the comments I got back from the architect was, that's a really interesting approach, and I don't think I've seen this anywhere. So I think part of this is going to be, let's see what, there's also a bit of let's see what happens here too, because I agree with everything Trustee Opsimer said. I mean, there's going to be certain projects that get up around 7 or 8. How do they tackle the problem then? There's some coherence with the top tiers, but unless you really get to a truly dense big project, some of those top tier 3 items just don't make sense. I mean, unless you have a massive project, you're not going to do underground parking. You're not going to do a structured parking.
Right.
You're not going to be able to get the 25% and the mixed use throughout the project. Whereas, if I get my 1 there, maybe it's the LEED certified building, which would be great. Then I get, I can go to the tier 2 and get, all brick building, and I'm getting a gray water system to help with drainage and things like that. So I think part of this is going to be, how does this work going forward? But I've gone far beyond the question you actually asked me, which was, is there incentivizing to get additional amenities? I don't think there is. I'm not sure that how we would do that, short of changing the fundamental underpinning of 1 amenity per variance, or the density bonus amenity requirement. I mean, you have to go back and really change how this is set up to do that.
So maybe I'm not understanding, and this is likely, why would one project require 8 different amenities?
So if they were to need a variance from setbacks and need a variance from parking and have a density and be in the area where you could get a density bonus, like, they start to stack, and you have to start with 1 no matter what. So it starts to stack up, and eventually you get to 5, 6, 7, 8, depending on, and there's a ton of variables. It's the underlying zoning, and it's the type of project you're doing, and it's whether you're in one of the 3 sort of areas of focus. So there's a lot of ways that these start to stack up and get to a heavy amenity project.
Okay. I have 2 other questions, Supervisor, not related.
Okay.
And again, I know I asked for this to come back on discussion because I wanted to be able to review it. a little bit more in depth. So I noticed, and I think you've even discussed this, Director Schmidt, about it used to be that the developer would have to come to the Planning Commission and the board. Now it says in the ordinance, it's Planning Commission or the board. Can you
So that's only for one specific part.
Okay.
They could, if they're just doing the conceptual review, they can go either direction. Frankly, we'd advise everyone to go both places. But for the actual process, it still is going to go Planning Commission recommendation, board for decision.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And then the last question was the removal of both the Environmental Commission and the school board as applicable as for review. What was your reason behind that, knowing we have ordinances that require Environmental Commission to review certain things, including wetlands?
That was actually removed by the Planning Commission before I even started. So I think the idea was there are already ways for those boards to weigh in. And so not necessary for that additional process here. But I can't speak. I don't want to put words in the mouth of the Planning Commission in that regard.
And so how would they have the ability to weigh in if it's not in this ordinance?
So if there were something like a wetland impact or something of that nature for a MUPUD project, it's something that we could have the Environmental Commission weigh in on. The school board question is an interesting one. I think they probably took that out because there hasn't been a whole lot of response from that in the past. And it was difficult to get answers. But that is, I think the Planning Commission was trying to figure out a way to take a somewhat unwieldy ordinance and make it a little smoother.
So if there's a wetland permit, it would still be required to go to the Environmental Commission?
I think that's something that we would strongly recommend in a case like this, just given that there's going to be, because part of the beginning of this process is get public input. Like there's an encouragement, there's a requirement that they meet with sort of groups to get input on the plan early on, and so that would be certainly something. If there's a wetland impact on an MUPUD project, which is somewhat rare, I'm not going to say not possible, but that's something where we'd say, hey, you should probably go talk to the Environmental Commission now as part of your initial due diligence process before you make a formal submittal.
Well, it's required by ordinance currently?
Yep.
Okay. Excellent, thank you, appreciate your time.
Let me get this straight. So it would no longer be required to go to the Environmental Commission?
So what it does is it takes out the specific requirement that the MUPUD goes through that review. That is all it takes out. So there are still other requirements throughout the ordinance where the Environmental Commission would be involved. But for the MUPUD ordinance, a future MUPUD would not have to go through that specifically for that project.
I don't understand why that would have been dropped out by the Planning Commission, quite frankly. If anything, we want our Environmental Commission involved as much as we can in environmentally sensitive areas. That's my opinion. Others, Mr. Opsimer, and then Ms. Guthrie.
First, I was just going to ask for what page and provision are we discussing?
So I'm on the strike-through version. Would you like strike-through or clean?
I guess the strike version,
Strike.
since we're striking language, we kind of need to look at that one.
Yeah, it's page 18 of the strike. It's sub 4J5 under the procedure provisions of the ordinance.
Line 8 and line 14.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's the old 5, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take a look at that and weigh in on that in a minute. So one other alternative that I thought of on the point scoring thing, so just to put a third alternative out there as a concept, because we already do this in the ordinance, we do have the overlays for the density that we lifted in downtown Hazlet and downtown Okemos. We could require a second 3-point amenity in those two areas, just knowing that we're giving people this density bonus and this option, and they do have some low-hanging fruit. To Director Schmidt's point, like building a parking deck is a huge ask. Like that's probably just not going to happen for any of these projects, except for maybe downtown Okemos, but we've already seen that kind of play out, and it's out, right? So perhaps just for those two zones where we lift the density and it's already in the MUPUD, you could require a second 3-point amenity, because I can easily point to, I mean, in the downtowns, they should be doing some public art. If not the full 1%, very close to it. They should already be doing public art. If you walk downtown East Lansing and their recent downtown developments, you know, they have similar public art requirements, and you can see it in the alleyways, you can see it on just kind of some of the dead zone walls where you don't have glass, right, but it's public facing, and you see murals go up, so that's like the low-hanging fruit one, right, is the public art, but we don't want them in those two zones to just utilize public art and not do vertical stacking, 25% commercial, et cetera. So that would be a third alternative where we zero in on those areas. And to Trustee Wazinski's point of how are these points being accrued, one, they have to do one amenity just by doing an MUPUD. 4 is worth density to go from 14 units to 18. So like DTE's project, Newton Point, or DTE's project off Central Park, neither of those, they're nowhere near 14 units an acre. So they're not requiring those 4. They would just need the setbacks. But downtown Okemos, they're gonna need setbacks on all 4 sides for sure. And then they're gonna need 4 for density, so they're gonna need 9 points. So for downtown Okemos, there's 9 points at least. But for, you know, the DTN projects that we've recently looked at, they probably only need like 2 or 4 points, because they're probably not getting into too many setback issues either. So I would just throw that out as one other alternative approach, so we don't end up with a bunch of public art projects in front of us, but never examining those other ones and zeroing it to the crucial areas.
However, public art is something we definitely need. But I understand your point.
I think it would be one of the two.
I don't want to see all art, but yeah.
I think it would be one of the two almost always.
Ms. Guthrie, you were next.
Thank you, Supervisor Syka. I agree with your concern about the environmental commission component and the importance of having their opinion. My one question I have is in regards to the definition of amenity. You struck out the current definition was stricken, and it was rewritten to say extraordinary project feature that provides usable benefit to both the occupants of the development and to the general public and reflects the scale of the facility, building, or place. Can you, I feel as if I understand more what the former definition was than the current definition. Maybe if you could explain to me what an extraordinary project feature is and what a usable benefit is. I'm having a hard, to me, those, like,
yeah, and I
who's
think,
describing what's extraordinary?
Yeah, and I think it's, you're trying to define something that's probably different for every project too, which makes it even more difficult. So in this case, it's going to be something that you wouldn't find in the average project. If, say someone chooses...
Like a waterfall along an outside wall or something?
That would be a very interesting piece of public art if someone tried to justify it that way.
I've seen it.
But exactly, that's the point. I've seen bamboo gardens in downtown settings. I've seen reflecting pools. You know, I think what the Planning Commission was trying to do with this was not pigeonhole by definition what we're going to get. And I think that's also why there's language, once you get into the actual amenities, about any other things subject to the Township Board's approval. I think we're trying to simply get people to think beyond your average project and something that is not ordinary, something that is extraordinary for a project that is, and then it gets into the whole idea of some of these are going to be very beneficial to the public, some of them are going to be of a more esoteric benefit, sort of an environmental long-term benefit to the public, but that it's something beyond simply development that is benefiting us as a township. And then getting into the scale, you know, obviously a smaller project is going to have a little bit tighter of an amenity, which gets us into the whole idea of, you know, what would support a parking structure. You know, at what point does the project get to a scale if that is the amenity that's required? So I think really what this is trying to do is point out that an amenity is something that is not ordinary to a development project. It is beyond what you would see normally.
Was there confusion or lots of questions, do you know, on the part of the developers in regards to amenity? Or?
Well, I mean, I think there's always been some question as to what actually accounts as an amenity for a project, because I think there's certain projects in the past that people have called amenities something that it's something we'd normally expect, you know, whether
like
it's
a
some
bike
enhanced,
rack or something?
whether
or?
it's some enhanced landscaping or sidewalk planters or things like that.
Covered bicycle parking actually was one that was used frequently. It was an amenity, so they got points for it, but we expected it. And applicants would say, well, it's your ordinance, fix your ordinance if you don't want. So that's what we're doing. We're reprioritizing.
Okay.
So we're not just letting them get all the low-hanging fruit right now, right? And so that's the point of when should they have to do 2 of these 3-point things? When should they have to do, you know, more of the 2-point amenities? When should they have to do 1-point amenities? And we're trying to scale them.
So that's the point of the word extraordinary.
Extraordinary, I think.
Not normal.
Yeah, well, Director Schmidt's saying like
Right?
the planning commission was leaving it open-ended.
I'm making sure I'm on the same page as everyone else here, what
Extraordinary
it
doesn't
means.
mean that it's outstanding. Extraordinary means it's not ordinary.
Right.
That's a common misconception of what extraordinary means.
It's open-ended, like the development at Abbott and Grand River in East Lansing has a rooftop restaurant and bar. We don't say anything about that in our ordinance. To Director Schmidt's point, the planning commission left it somewhat open-ended so that if a developer wanted to propose something like that, they could bring it to us and say, would this be worth 3 points or 2 points?
Okay.
And we could go, yeah, that'll get you 3 points.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Shane.
I like this draft. I like this point system. We need to do something with the MUPD ordinance, and this is a relatively bold attempt at it. And I think you're right, we don't know what we're going to get back, but this is a try at it. It's a good try. We might find in a couple of years we need to come back and tweak it further, but I commend the Planning Commission the work they did on it, their imagination in doing that, and I think we will get back some interesting proposals, and we may not agree with them all or approve them all, but we'll get something more than what we've been getting, because too many of them have taken the low-hanging fruit. The electric car charger, which truly these days is an essential development feature. There's nothing extraordinary about those at all in 2021. So we don't know yet, but I think we'll get some good results here. And so my sense is we should move this towards adoption and see a cleaned up version of this and bring it back for discussion and hopefully final passage in the next few weeks.
Dan and then Courtney.
I was wondering if we might just take a straw poll on the Environmental Commission striking and on a concept of requiring a second 3-point amenity for downtown Okemos and Hazlet.
I'm not adverse to getting see if there's a consensus on those 2 issues. Let's start with the first one. And how do people feel about that?
Keep it.
Keep it.
Given the increase in environmental concerns with climate change, I think is a merit.
Yeah, I quite frankly, I thought we I was going to say we had a consensus for it, but clearly we do. And then the other one is on the amenity, and you want to explain that a little more, Dan?
Yeah, so just requiring, so right now, the way that the ordinance is presented in our packet, Director Schmidt inversed what we talked about at the last meeting, and instead of limiting how many points you can accrue in that 2-point bucket to 1, one amenity worth 2 points, he flipped it and said, okay, no, you have to do 1 3-point amenity. My idea is, why not require a second 3-point amenity only in downtown Okemos and Hazlet as we define it in the ordinance already for the density lifting, because we lifted the density, remember, and we created those zones and they're mapped. So we're giving people the ability to go up a 5th story, unlimited density within the constraints of going up 5 stories. So in that circumstance, can we expect them to do a second 3-point amenity, which I think the way it is today, we'd see a lot of public art. It's the lowest hanging of the three, and we really want to see one of those other ones. But public art is really critical in a downtown environment, so I think we could really maximize
So
outcome.
bottom line is, you would prefer that the language be that you don't have to pick a 1/3 tier, right?
You have to do 2 3-point amenities in the 2 downtowns.
Okay.
Can I just clarify one thing?
Yep.
We are adding Meridian Mall to those 2 downtowns, so it's actually 3 areas
That
now.
would be, yeah, I think that would be appropriate too.
Okay. Because I don't want to create another category. So.
Yep, no, that's right. I forgot that we added the Meridian Mall to the density lifting. Because we're adding that as part of this amendment that we're going through right now.
Correct.
So, which was part of a prior discussion. So, yep, for those
Okay.
3 zones.
How many people seem to, without voting, how many people seem to agree with that, or just need nods of heads? Okay. With those 2 ideas in mind, can you bring us a final version for a introduction?
Yes, sir.
And we'll either make some amendments before we introduce it, or we'll introduce it as it comes. One or the other.
I'm pretty good with it, but I have one other thing.
All right, go
Indulge me
ahead,
for
Dan.
one other moment.
That's good.
I brought
Yeah, I'm
this up
glad you're
previously.
studious on it. Yes, go ahead.
I brought this up previously, and Director Schmidt gave us his thoughts. I mean, the Planning Commission did recommend taking the traffic study requirement from a net increase of 100 trips per day. So this is when we require the traffic study, is when we suspect that there's a net increase in 100 trips per day. Planning Commission recommended taking it down to 50. I did a little bit of my own research. In East Lansing, it's 750, and that's for all rezonings.
Yeah.
In Delhi, it's 500.
Yeah.
I mean, I would actually propose, and this may be blasphemy in this township, but I would propose that it should be minimum 250. I still think that's extremely conservative when you just look at pragmatic traffic. I really think Delhi's 500 would be appropriate, but I guess I would propose tonight that maybe we bump that to 250.
All right, I could see that, and we can talk about it next time as we adopt, whether we want to go higher than that. Who else feels 250 be all right? Okay. That's your 3rd one.
Well, that's, yeah. We could make that 2,500 and you're still going to hit it for most of these projects. I mean, 50 is a bank. So, yeah, we can make that change as well.
All right. Okay. Then we'll see this on for action as introduction, and like I say, if there's need for amendments, we'll all put our thinking caps on, be ready for that in 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
For the next item, I was hoping to call on the manager first. Next item is appreciation pay.
Let's see.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So, not an easy subject to try to get to. When you talk about appreciating his employee, we have 7 bargaining groups, and then we have a non-union group. It's very difficult to find a level playing field, but I want to rewind the tape a little bit and go back to, for some of you that may not have been on the board or involved in the township government back in 2013, 14, and 15, we actually went above and beyond the contracts. I don't know if you're aware of that or not, but back then, we had contracts in place, but we also had a tie bar to that because the economy wasn't as strong back then. And we said that if the taxable value went up more, of the township went up more than 2%, we would add 1% each year. The supervisor remembers this. We tie barred that for 3 years. And so, we were giving incentives out 8 years ago to our team members. So what's before us tonight about how we go about this appreciation thing. Also, going back to, I know everyone wants to tie this to COVID, but there's just some basic things I think everyone should be familiar with before we talk about. I think Trustee Sutherland said it best to me 3 or 4 weeks ago. She may be a quieter one on the board, but she was pretty prophetic 3 weeks ago when she said this discussion, because, with her HR experience, she said to me, trust me, this discussion is going to end up causing you issues with your bargaining groups. That's what she said. And we're there. So that was just 3 or 4 weeks ago. But understanding how do we put this all together? How do we work as a team to accomplish the goal with maybe combining just all the discussion that's occurred? Back 5 years, 6 years ago, we said to our non-union group, geez, we're paying all these higher pension contributions to our police and fire. We're going to voluntarily increase your defined contribution, which was 8.5% of your salary, to 10%. Really? Yep, we're going to do that. Well, do we have to negotiate that? Nope. We're just going to do that. So add on 1.5% 6 years ago to all non-police and fire employees and figure out what that number would be today that we've incentivized and appreciated our team. So whether it was increasing the defined contribution voluntarily or tie barring an increase to taxable value to give folks more of a percentage back 8 years ago, we've been doing the appreciation thing as far back as I can remember since I arrived here in 2013. We also started summer picnics. We started lug nuts games. We've done a lot of things to try to appreciate our employees. It's not all about income, as some people would post. It's about a lot of things. And lunches and team building and all that stuff matters to people. In fact, we fast forward now to COVID. And I hope that I've tried to illustrate this a few times, and I hope tonight it makes sense to everyone. The talk is about equity. And I get that discussion. That's an important topic. We have equity. In fact, if we sided with one or the other, if you ask all of our team members who got the bigger slice of the pie in the last year, it wouldn't be police and fire. Back when COVID started, there was, and I speak tonight not only for myself, but on behalf of Director Tehoff as well, who's been intimately involved with all of this with me. When this all started, 80 hours of time off came about, which is more of a value than $1,000 to employees. 80 hours of time off, 2 weeks. We decided who was essential and who was not essential. And this was April of 2020. So this is when COVID first hit. So police and fire, you come to work every day, you get no time off. Everybody else, for the most part, you get 80 hours off. And then after you're finished with your 80 hours, you can work at home for 6 weeks, which was a bigger hit than anything. Anything we've ever done in the township, work from home was number one, I can tell you that, from our employees' standpoint. So non-police and fire received at a later time 2 $1,000 payments. Everyone else got the benefit of 80 hours off plus 6 weeks at home. And then what happened when they came back? We instituted a flex time. And again, flex time is not new. Flex time didn't just become of COVID. If I can rewind the tape 3 years ago in this room, some of you were in here, Chief Plaga shaking his head, when we were trying to do flex time 3 years ago, and an elected official stood in the way of it. We were trying to do flex time 3 years ago. So bringing this out now during COVID and all that, it's not anything new. We've been appreciating our employees for 8 years. Do we have 100% satisfaction among our team? No, we don't. But we have a strong satisfaction among our team, very strong. I won't get into paying the full premium for health care or 90% of deductibles, which now the board has decided they're going to be paid up front all at once, which is going to be a cost to us. I share this all with you because we have a long history in this township of appreciating in different ways. Has it been entirely fair? Probably not. But when you have 7 bargaining groups and a non-union group, it's tough to find that level playing field. But we have, if you want to look at COVID, just COVID, and set aside all the stuff we've done before that, okay, let's focus on COVID tonight and what happened since COVID. If you ask the non-union employees, the ones who've had all the time that they were given off, plus the flex time of a half hour per day, which equals 3 weeks of additional vacation, If you ask them, would you rather have a one-time payment, or would you rather, well, we actually don't have to think about asking them, we've asked them. Would you rather have all this time, mental health-wise, time off, winter coming, or would you have a payment to a person? Please continue the flex time. It is the most important thing. Now, we can't do everything. We can't pay your health care and give you more salary and give you time off and give you cash payments and give you more of an increase. So what we did, and we've been working on this just didn't come about the last few weeks. No board member comments, thoughts, actions put this in motion. The retention discussion started with the budget formation back in July. Director Tehoff and I have been working on a comprehensive program for quite a while. Why don't we talk about it a lot? Because we don't want to get too far out in front of ourselves with things we can't do. We got to see where the finances are. We just got from our assessor, we just received from our assessor the cost of living and the inflation rate for going forward for next year for taxable value on properties. We know that's going to be well over 3%. In our contracts, we call for a 2% raise next year. So well below the cost of living. So again, how do we put this all into motion? How do we put a level approach to all the bargaining units and all of our 165 team members? So what we have put together, what we're proposing is that the non-union or non-police and fire union staff, so that would be 165 minus roughly 70, would receive, we're going to try something really, really unique here. It's going to be a bold approach, probably the most bold approach in Michigan for what a community is doing. Whether it's going to work or not, I have no idea. But I know one thing, the team's going to love it, and it's going to increase our retention, and it's going to increase our recruitment. The jury's still out on what happens with it, but here's the approach. And I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but there's an 8-year history here tonight, not just the last 5 weeks. So, for all team members separate from police and fire union, they're going to go to a 4-day work week starting in January. So January and February only. It's a very trial period. For 8 weeks, they will have 8 Fridays off with pay. We will not go to 10 hours. By going to 10 hours, we have a lot of issues. We have single parents in our team. We have a number of them. And sitting down again, taking the time, which we have done, and I'm pointing over here to Director Tehoff, which we have done, talking to them, saying, what's important to you? You want a payment? You want this? You want that? What's important for retention and recruitment? The last thing I can do, Frank, Abby, is to be here until 6 o'clock at night. I have childcare issues. I have to be there. Right now, this great flex time that you're providing, I can leave here at 4:30. I can't stay till 6. So to go to 4:10s would be a huge sacrifice, impossible for a number of our team members. So again, sitting down, talking to what's important. So we're going to go to 4/8s and see how it goes starting in January. We're going to have to adjust that a little bit because of tax time. We're going to have to bring some people in on a couple Fridays, but they're aware of that. So they would receive a flex time enhanced, 8 Fridays off. Once we come back in March, they will go back to their flex time they have now of 7.5. Out of everything we've done in appreciation, whether it's lug nut games, this, that, or the other thing, team, all that, the most important thing to our team members is the flex time that we've done, bar none. And I've taken the time and went around the building and talked to people and asked them, without a doubt. In addition to the flex time, the 4-day work week for 8 weeks, we'll then go back to the flex time we have in place right now. We would also keep the retention payment, which is scheduled for December of 2022 at $1,000 is in the budget. And in addition to that, we would provide a 1% adjustment on their base pay starting in January above what we normally provide, which is 2%. So we would scale up to try to get more to the cost of living and the inflation. So all non-police and fire would get 3% increases starting in January. So an 8-hour work week, or a 4-day work week for 8 weeks, flex time after that, and a 1% increase in my base, and a retention payment in December. That's for non-police and fire. What would the police and fire get? Well, guess what? We can't give them time off. How do you create a level playing field? You can't. You can't say to police and fire, you can have all this time off. We don't have enough people to do that. And so we sat down, we took the time, instead of just coming up with a concept, we took the time to sit down with the police unions. We took the time to talk to the fire union and say, and by the way, the fire union said, anything you can give us is great. We know they're getting time off, but we can't do that. And the police unions, we met with them twice to have this discussion, and they're very pleased with what we've come out with as well. They would get no time off. They wouldn't get the 4-day work weeks, plus they wouldn't get the extended flex time in 2022. And they would get a $1,000 retention payment. They'd get their HSA up front like everybody else, and they would get a 1.5% increase on top of their 2% that's called for in the contract. So they would get an extra 0.5% in 2022. So they would get an extra 0.5% of salary. Everyone else would get the flex time that I talked about earlier. That's the concept that's taken us 5 months to put together, starting with the retention discussion back in July and August. If you want to talk about equity for the police and fire. Because if you ask anyone, if you ask our employees, if anyone got the short stick, and everyone's always, if anyone got the short stick, it was the police and fire. They lost out on 80 hours of time off, and do the math, if you're making $52,000 a year, that's $2,000. And then they got 6 weeks at home. Several thousands of dollars of compensation for folks to stay home, and the police and fire didn't get it. So that's what we are planning to implement starting in January. It's a comprehensive approach. All the unions are aware of it. We had a Zoom call with, I think 66 of our team members attended it today. All the unions are on board with it. I think it goes a long way towards equity, retention, recruitment, and just all-out appreciation for our entire team. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, but that's what the proposal is from the township administration. So sorry for the long-winded, but I wanted to take you back and rewind the tape 8 years and walk through that.
Yeah, I would just mention as a retired government employee, and there's other here, adding to the base is much more valuable than a one-time payment because it's there forever. And the next time there's another increase, it compounds just like interest. So adding to the base is much more important. I think Kathy could contest to that as well.
That's true.
All right, Mr. Opsmer.
So some thoughts on what the manager has put out there. And obviously this is a conversation that I think we've all been having, for some time now. So in the budget, we have the $1,000 retention pay, which, to the supervisor's point, that brings equity though for the lower income employees where the base pay just doesn't have that impact, right? And so by doing the 1% increase or the 1.5, depending on the employee class, we're kind of commingling the two, and we've got that equity for lower income employees, and we have, that long-term, more sustainable approach of adding to the base pay increase that compounds itself. So I like the marrying of the two. This is something that I asked for in the next budget cycle, so I'm happy to see us advancing this, and I think this is also something I think people have been talking about internally across the board, cost of living adjustment, right? And I think this proposal helps our employees meet the cost of living adjustments that they're seeing pretty closely. Our lower income employees would see somewhere between a 4.2 and a 4.8% increase, they'd probably, get up near that 4.5 to 5.5% inflation that we're seeing. Some of the employees on the higher end of the pay scale wouldn't quite get there on a percentage basis this year. So I certainly like those components. I'm interested to see what, if anything, would come from the flex scheduling on Fridays. That'll be interesting, but I do want to just have one thing that stood out to me when we talk about what has been done, and when we talk about work from home and stuff. I think, it's tough to say. I don't know that I've seen any peer-reviewed surveying on it to know definitively, but anecdotally, it seems like a lot of people enjoyed the experience, but not everybody had a pleasant experience. So, some households were parenting and trying to get their kids through school, and it was a very unpleasant experience, and they ended up working later into the evening because they were behind on their work, because they didn't have that. I very much prefer to go to the office environment and be able to remove myself from some of the distractions. So that was the only thing that kind of stood out to me in terms of what we've done. The other thing that I didn't know until Manager Walsh said it was this prior collective bargaining agreement where we do where we create that trigger with the tax base increase. I don't know whose idea that was from that management time and that board, but I do like that because it makes sure that the board is held honest when we're having large increases, and we don't see increases above, we're usually in that 1.5 to 2.6 range for tax base growth, but if we're hitting 2.75 and up, we really should be looking at like a trigger like that to make sure that the employees are being compensated in good times, because we know there's going to be hiring freezes and there's going to be wage freezes during the really bad times, which don't occur often for a local unit like the Great Recession. But, we want to make sure that we are doing that in good times. So I think that's an interesting concept for the future as an aside from what's been put out there. But I think we're arriving at something very holistic where we've got that lump sum, we've got the base adjustment, and hopefully it'll lead to good retention and hopefully good recruitment too, because we spent the early part of the meeting talking about how are we going to get some of these vacancies filled in the township as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll tell you the best thing about the 1% tie bar to the growth. The best part about it was I came here in May of 2013, and within a few weeks was negotiating contracts that were going to expire. And we came up with that concept of tie barring it back then, but it was after basically we were done negotiating. And you know how everything has to go into a contract, right? I said, just trust me. Trust me in 2013, 14, and 15. I'm telling you, if our growth is 2% or more, we will add 1% on to your base. The unions said yes. And for 3 years in a row, we had growth, and they got a 1% onto their base. It was a handshake agreement.
So it technically wasn't codified into the agreement.
It was even better. It was a handshake agreement, looking each other in the eye and trusting each other. And that's the relationship I've tried to have here for the last almost 9 years.
And one final point, and then I'll turn it back over to the supervisor. The conversation that I think we're all having holistically here, and I think it's a healthy one, but when we look at the collective bargaining units specifically, and I've said this many times, they often don't negotiate on the base pay increase. There's just frankly more important things from an economic standpoint for the members of the union, namely retirement-oriented benefits, that they spend most of their time negotiating on those retirement components of their benefit package. So I think it's a good thing that we're having this discussion, because this base pay thing often gets left out of the equation because they're taking their time to negotiate the other components. And I do think, especially right now with high inflation, it's a good time to have this conversation about annual cost of living adjustment.
I will tell you, though, in response to that, in the last two contracts, at one contract, the non-administrative part of the fire department got a 5% increase in 1 year.
Yeah.
And then the next contract, the other, I don't want to say the other half, but the other portion of the fire. So the fire department, all of them have seen 1 year in the last 4 years with a 5% raise in 1 year.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. And part of that was, there was other components there with the police unions having a contract that exceeded theirs for the 3 years prior. But there's a lot of moving parts. To your point,
Yep.
there's never going to be true parity or equity. So that was really a small concession to fire, because they made a lot more concessions in the 3-year agreement preceding that one. So, yeah. With that, I'll yield my time to the supervisor.
Mr. DeShane's next.
Thank you. This is an important discussion to have, and I'm glad we're having it. Our employees have worked hard the past 18 months. They've had a difficult time with it. No one knows that better than my department of utility and tax. We've had 3 tax seasons, 45,000 tax payments since COVID broke out, and about 100,000 utility payments. And many of those, most of those come in one payment at a time. So working from home really hasn't been an option for us. We're handling cash, we're meeting with the public. Even during the worst of COVID, we had them outside in those portable units a year ago, which was no pitney moving all your stuff out there, but they did it. They worked hard. So I think it's important that we look at our employees and make sure that we are doing all we can to show appreciation and to compensate them properly. I really like what the managers come up with today. I was in on the meeting he held with all the employees. There are 66 employees, but if you take out the police and fire, many of them were on patrol or out of the building. We probably had 90% of our non-police and fire employees there. And the manager explained it to the employees, and essentially said to them, this is different than what we talked about a week ago. This has evolved, and explained that process to the employees. I think they appreciated his candor. And while the initial discussion was to have December, no Fridays, have Fridays off in December as well, that's just not feasible, and they seem to understand that. And my sense from reading the crowd was they're very excited about the having the 8 Fridays off in January and February. Kind of surprised by it. Many would think, well, does that mean you work 10-hour days? And no, they don't. They're be compensated for 32 hours in the building. Now, most departments like ours will have to put in a little extra productivity, extra time. It's not like the workload is being cut by 20%. The workload is still there. So there's going to require a certain amount of hustle, but I think most employees say it's worth it to have those Fridays off, because the workloads remain the same. We can't stop calling residents back. We can't stop processing payments. Your department can't stop processing voter applications. All the work has to be done, and it will be done. Our employees are very conscientious and loyal. So to the discussion in front of us about the appreciation pay, again, I understand why it's been brought forward. I also, I like what the manager has proposed in lieu of that. It has actually given them more than they would get with the bonus pay. And we saw that today. We saw the appreciation that was shown in the words and reaction from our employees. And to me, most important of all, we have to remember, we set policy. We don't directly set pay. We hire a manager to manage our employees. By endorsing what the managers proposed tonight as a way to show appreciation for our employees, we stay in our role of corporate governance. We don't step onto the manager's role of directly setting pay or bonus levels. That's a really dangerous step for this board to take. I don't think anyone wants to do anything dangerous. I think the intent is honorable and right, which is to show appreciation. We need to do it in the right way that reflects the role of the manager and the role of the board. We set policy, the manager implements it. I think these items he's itemized tonight for us, the 1% pay raise, the $1,000 bonus, the 8 days off, and not to mention the flex time, all show that he is following our policy, which is to to appreciate our employees and do all we can to retain them. We have got 165 very hardworking employees, and they need to know that this board appreciates the work they're done. We're successful because they do their work every day. And I believe these incentives and this appreciation, these actions showing appreciation, complete that job of showing our employees that we do value them, we want to keep them. They're essential to our success. So I thank the manager for bringing these forward. I think they reflect the will of this board, which is to show appreciation to our employees for the good work they're doing, particularly during the past 18 months, which have been very challenging.
I just want to reiterate just one thing, that this plan is our plan. Director Tehoff has been intimately involved with putting this together.
Ms. Sunland.
Yeah, and I want to mention that, yes, I was concerned early on as far as the bargaining unit issues and everything involved, but I think this is really exciting how the HR manager and Mr. Walsh put their thinking caps on to try to actually get a better deal for the employees than what we originally proposed. And I think it's just excellent. It's great.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to mention something that is kind of underlying principles. Probably virtually nobody else on the board, maybe Mr. DeShane, based on his last comments, is aware of the fact that this board, long before any of us got on it, adopted formally to follow policy governance. And policy governance is described by John Carver in his book, Boards That Make a Difference. And if you want to take a look at it, you should. And maybe Mr. Walsh could have Michelle or somebody dig out the policy governance adoption that this board went through. Under that, the Meridian Board sets the policy, but it's the manager who carries it out. This system has been very successful in corporations, groups, organizations everywhere. Both school districts that we honor so much here, they follow it. The board does not do things like decide, okay, manager, we want you to give a bonus. Manager, we want you to do this, except maybe as part of the budget process. The budget process is where policy governance allows the board to get more into the nuts and screws and nails and everything else of the process. But generally, it's up to the management to carry out our policies. Our policy is that we should have a good, well-paid staff, that we should retain that staff. And it's up to the manager and his people, Ms. Titoff and others in the management sphere, to carry that out. And it's not really our job. We shouldn't be saying, okay, let's, manager, you go give them a $1,000 bonus. The manager should come to us and say, you know, I'm going to give them a $1,000 bonus. This is for information. It fits in your budget, and it's needed, and this is why. And that's really where we should be, and I think that's where we are now. So I don't think there's any action needed on this item. I think at this point, the manager and his team have come up with a good proposal, and they're going to do what they should do and carry out their proposal. And again, I'd recommend that you all look at Mr. Carver's book, Boards That Make a Difference, and that we dig out the policy governance that this board has formally adopted even before I got on it. Ms. Jackson.
So are you, Mr. Walsh, looking for board endorsement of your plan?
I'm looking for board input. You know, I really appreciate what the supervisor just said, but I don't operate on my own. I like to have input from the board, and I sent out an email to all of you maybe a week or 10 days ago that this is what we are working on.
Excuse me.
We've been working on it for quite some time, but when you're dealing with 7 bargaining units, it takes time to work out things like this. Am I looking for an endorsement? Obviously, if we received a lot of pushback tonight, like, oh, I don't think we should be doing, why are we doing, why are we have contracts in place, why are we giving them 1.5% on top of their contracts? We don't have to do that. It would cause us, well, I'll speak for myself, and I can probably speak for Director Tehoff, it would cause us to pause. Like, maybe we're on a different island than everyone else. But that's not what I've heard so far tonight. It's a very bold plan. And I would put it up against any of the 1,700 communities in Michigan. It is very bold. You're not seeing communities go above the collective bargaining agreements. Oh, let's do more for you, and then let's give you $1,000, and then let's pay your HSA up front. I mean, and some of that came from the board, I think, at the last meeting. So our approach, look, I have been opposed. If you ask anyone, I should get an A for one thing, and that's having an open mind, because I am vehemently opposed to a 4-day work week. Don't think it's a good idea at all. And that's been my approach for 30 years. But as I look at retention and recruitment, I have to change the way I do things. Either change the way you do things or get out of the way is the way I look at it. And so in listening to everyone and taking a different approach, I don't even know if I like what I'm proposing. But I'm willing to give it a shot to see if it works and what it's been the greatest. I thought casual wear was the greatest thing we've ever done. But flex time and 4-day work weeks and all the people are really excited. It's pretty good to see. But again, I've been really opposed to this concept for 3 decades. But let's give it a shot.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes. I personally am impressed with all of the work that's gone into what you're proposing. I'm not sure I understand it all. I'd like to see it on paper. And on the surface, I don't have any opposition to that.
Let me just walk through it real quickly for one more minute. If you're a police or fire union member, you're going to get a 1.5% increase in January on top of what you're prescribed in your contract, which is 2%. Mm-hmm. So I'm a police officer, I'm going to get 3.5% increase. I'm going to get a $1,000 payment in December of 2022 if I'm still here. I'm getting my HSA in January in full. If I'm a non-police and fire, if I'm Mr. Lemaster here, I'm going to get a 4-day work week starting in January. I'm going to get every Friday off in January, February pay. I'm not going to 10-hour days. And I'm going to get a 1% increase in what I'm supposed to receive on top of, well, the 2%. So they would be at 3%. They get a 0.5% less because they're getting the time off. They'd get their HSA up front in January, and they would get $1,000. Mr. Lemaster will get $1,000 if he is with us in December of 2022. That's the whole plan in totality.
Mr. Officer, then Ms. Wazinski.
I've already spoken. I'll let Trustee Wazinski go.
Go ahead.
First off, I also want to say I appreciate the amount of effort in thinking outside the box, because it is times are different, and you're right, we do have to change. I do appreciate that. I am a little confused though, and going back to equity, I even with this proposed draft plan, 1.5% to certain personnel and only 1% to other personnel, yet giving time off. My concern is the 0.5% difference is guaranteed. The time off isn't guaranteed if in fact the capacity of your workload stays the same. Like, I think of it from a manager's perspective.
That's not correct.
So would the Fridays be mandatory?
Mandatory?
Yeah.
Well, there's not a soul that's going to come in here if they don't have to. I mean, we are closing on Fridays. We're not open.
You'll close the township hall.
We're closed. We're in a 4-day work week. Yeah, so it's guaranteed. And then I already know from a trial period of a year that the flex time of 7.5 works. We haven't missed a beat over the last year. We've been on 7.5-hour days. So we're going right back to that in March. So to say it's not guaranteed, it is in place and we're going to try. Now, will it be in place a year from now? Will we do it in February and January or January, February of 2023? Don't know that yet.
So they're going to get 8 Fridays off, but then not get the 0.5% sustainable base pay, which Supervisor said himself, the best way to approach it is in base pay.
Yeah, and we are giving them a portion of base pay. And if you want to come in and poll the employees like I have and ask them if they want a 0.5% or whether they want 8 days off in January and February, you'll get a resounding, love the proposal that's been presented. The 0.5% will not interest them. In fact, we put it up against a lot. We put up the proposal internally with a lot more than a 0.5%. We can't have everything. We can't say.
No, but we can make it equitable, and I just
it
having
is
a hard
equitable.
time seeing
So,
why are we choosing days off over. Why are we making it different? I guess that's my question to you, Manager, and you are much more experienced.
Yeah, so we're making it different because I'm dealing with different groups. I can't say to police and fire. In fact, the police and fire will tell you. They've told us. Well, I'll speak for the police. Has told us they would rather have the cash because they can't take the time. Giving them an extra 40 or 60 hours, can't give them 8 days, but if we gave them a portion of that, they can't take it anyway. So they walk them the 1.5%. And as a matter of fact, if all of our employees would rather come to work 8 hours a day for an extra 0.5% a year, then let's do it. But that's not what they want. And that's what's taken us 5 months to put together. This is equitable because one group is getting 1.5%, but they come to work full 12-hour days, no breaks. The other group gets a significant flex time and a 0.5%. I mean, if we want to go back and say to everybody, they can come to work 8 hours a day for 0.5%, this proposal gets turned on its head.
I guess I just don't know why that was a different proposal between the two groups to begin with.
If we gave 1.5% to everyone, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now we're equitable, right? But guess what? You get 8 days off in January and February, and you get 3 weeks of additional vacation time by coming in a half hour late every day. That's what you get. Your departments, nope. You're coming to work every day.
I guess you're not understanding what I'm asking. So
I guess not.
So why, if we gave 1.5% over the board, right, everybody,
Yep.
and not give the time off, why was that even on the table? I guess. Why make that difference between the two groups?
Because we took the time to ask everyone what they would prefer. And a resounding response from, I'm not pointing to just you, but the group, we love the flex time. We love it. We love it. They would have taken that. I can tell you the 1% we didn't even need to do. The flex time is so important to that group that now, not all of them. There's a few people who, whatever we do, are going to have a different perspective on it. Okay? There's a small group in that. We have that in the township. But the large majority of folks prefer the flex time. I mean, 8 Fridays off in the dead of winter, and then I come back and the rest of the year, I get 7.5-hour days. Or I'm making $50,000 a year. 1%'s $500. 0.5%'s $250. Nope, I want to come to work those 8 days, and I don't want that 3 weeks vacation. I want my $250. Not going to happen, Trustee Wazinski. The group wants the flex time.
Given the option, absolutely not. But I just don't understand why the option was on the table. Why it wasn't 1.5% across the board, period. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, given the option, of course you choose that. Although it's not what
Why
we're
are
going
we
with
offering
talking about
your question really is, why are we offering flex time? We're offering flex time because...
No, my question is, why are we offering difference? That's my question. You've explained it, I understand what you're saying.
We can't give flex time to police and fire. In fact, that's not their top choice. Their top choice is, the 1.5%. The other side prefers the flex time. Why do we do it? Because this whole goal was to recruit, take care of mental health, and retain employees. That was the whole goal of this program. And if you ask all of the employees on this side of the table, that's what they wanted. The whole goal was to provide people what they wanted. And so that's why we did it. I'm not understanding, I guess, where you're coming from.
I guess I'm looking back at when the budget was, when we were talking about the budget, and I feel like we made a big miss on what was happening here. I just don't feel like I totally understood it, so that's why I'm asking a lot of questions right now.
What didn't you understand when we did the budget? Help
I
me
didn't understand why we didn't have 2 incentive pays across the board. Why, why we're only having one for one group and one for the other, and I understand that some prefer flex time. That's fantastic, and I understand that police and fire may not be able to have that. I'm just wondering, making those offers and options to be more considerate of the equitability overall and the sustainability. We're talking about increasing base pay, that's sustainable, versus, I mean, I would love 8 Fridays off too. That's not sustainable, that's temporary. So in my head, I'm just trying to understand all of what you have been processing for the last 5 months, and that's why I'm asking the questions.
Yeah, so it is sustainable because the 0.5% that we're talking about is $250. So over 4 years, it's $1,000. So over 4 years, we're going to be offering 3, 6, 12, 15 weeks of vacation to the same group. So they could now, if you took this in totality, they can get $1,000 over 4 years with 0.5%, or they can have about 12 to 15 weeks off.
And you're basing that on $25,000 per year?
$50,000 per year. Heck, make it $100,000. Make it $100,000, way out of whack. And they would get $4,000 over 4 years or 15 weeks off.
But it compounds, right? Like, it compounds. So you're increasing proportionally, right? So, true,
Yeah.
but it's
Your
consistent.
question really is why do we do this? And we did it because that's what that part of the team wanted. I guess if I came in here tonight and said, we're doing away with flex time and we're not doing 4-day work weeks and everyone's getting a 1.5%. And everybody's saying, well, wait a second, we want to keep our flex time. We've taken the time to investigate and talk to people. We went around the building and talked to people and said, what would you prefer? And you know what? We put it up against a lot more than $250 a year. And every person we talked to, every person said, love the flex time, especially with winter coming in a half hour late, awesome. 4 or 8 Fridays off, awesome. They want that way up here compared to the 0.5%. We know that because we've taken the time over the last few months to research this. So why was it offered? It was offered because that's what they wanted. That was the goal. I'm not going to say, I know you want that. I know you want flex time. I know you want 4-day work weeks, but Frank Walsh has never believed in that. We're not going to do it. You're going to get the 1.5%. And they're not going to get what they want. That doesn't help us with retention, recruitment. Now we can go out and talk to employees and say, you know what? 7.5-hour days. And we have a history of 4-day work weeks in January, February. You don't think that's going to make Director Tehoff's job a lot easier? That was the goal of this program. I hope that answers your question.
I appreciate all of that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's good questions. It's just, I know this took us 5 months to get to this point. I understand there's going to be a lot of questions, but we have a lot of happy team members, and it's going to help us recruit and retain. And I said we would never do it.
You know, I will openly say that on Friday I became 75. And that gives me the right to pretend that I have some wisdom. Early in my career as a school board member, I attended sessions, educational sessions like we have for, municipal and township people, et cetera. And there was a whole session by a speaker who was well known throughout the country, I don't remember his name, unfortunately, about fairness and equity. And it stuck with me ever since. And this is like 40 years ago or 30 years ago that I went through this. You get a parent whose child is struggling. You get a parent whose child can handle everything easily, and the teacher spending more time with the student that's struggling. And the parent of the other student says, that's not fair. My kid's not getting your time the way this other kid is. Because they're hung up on what this speaker called a junior high aspect of fairness. That is not what fairness is. Fairness is not giving the same to everybody. Fairness is giving to everybody the amount they need. Now, what I'm hearing is the employees prefer, and you know, I can put my own feeling, would I prefer it? It's not important. The employees prefer the 7.5 hours. The employees prefer the 8 Fridays free to the 0.5%. Well, that's what they prefer, so let's give them what they need, what they want. That's where the equity and the fairness comes in. Not just blindly say, okay, everybody gets 1.5%. Because that's not really fairness. Not if that's not what they need or want. You had your hand up.
Thank you, Supervisor Stajka. I appreciate all the work that you and Director T. Hoff have been doing for the past 5 months, you said?
Yeah, ever since the budget was adopted.
For the past 5 months.
Yeah.
I haven't been on the board before, so I don't know how much discussion there is in the past in regards to collective bargaining and the things that you bargain for and these types of issues or anything like that. The appreciation pay that was brought before the board on October 5th by Trustee Jackson and myself, and thank you to the board members for tabling in my absence last time. I appreciate that. And the reintroduction of the appreciation pay tonight, the purpose and the intent of the appreciation pay was in regards to appreciating employees for all that they went through during COVID. It didn't have anything to do with collective bargaining. I think all of these things that you're introducing and you've been working on with Ms. T. Hoff are fabulous things. I was hired in 1998 at the township, and I was in the non-supervisory category. I was also in the supervisory category. Both my parents are union members. I was in the union for however many years that was that I was in the union. I've been endorsed by unions, and so I'm a strong union person. I'm a strong supporter of people who are in unions, and I'm a strong supporter of compensating them appropriately, and so I appreciate you and Ms. T. Hoff looking at compensating them appropriately with the 1.5% and the 1%. I understand it, I get it. I have the same quandaries in regards to the Fridays that you're discussing, and I think Treasurer DeShane mentioned, you know, we got bills, we may have to have people come in, and, you know, we have voters, and I'm concerned about mental health in regards to the workload. You know, with shoveling sidewalks and with DPW workers, and so they're just not going to shovel any sidewalks on a Friday. I mean, I get that whole thing of, you know, we really need to have people. You know, we provide a service to the public, we need to have people. So I see both sides because I've also been a long time proponent of 10-hour workdays. So I'm concerned about the mental health of working 32 hours a week and the amount of work that staff has, and that they don't get burned out feeling like they have to fit all of that work in to get it done so they can have a Friday off. That does concern me. Although I appreciate it, I get it, I definitely want every Friday off. I understand it, but I also think, in my experience as being an employee of Meridian Township and now a board member, that not only yourself, but the previous township manager and my previous bosses that I've had have always been very flexible. They've always, and you yourself have always been very considerate of time and being with family and making that top priority and understanding the needs of employees. There is not one time that I know of where any director or chief or manager or assistant township manager, deputy township manager has denied an employee the importance of being with family. And that strikes me as flexible time, in my opinion. When you have someone such as yourself or the leadership that's under you understand the needs of employees, and they say, like in my current situation, you know, my mom needs me, I gotta go. There's no question, there's no There's no talk about, you gotta work on all your time and all the, 10 hours and 15 minutes that you worked or whatever. It's not like that around here. And there's an appreciation for that, and there's an understanding for that, and that's a community type of feeling that has been built into being employed at Meridian Township, and that's probably one of the reasons why I've always liked working and serving the residents of Meridian Township. And so I appreciate all of those efforts, and like Trustee Opsimer said, this is a very healthy discussion. And I think that the introduction of the appreciation pay has led to this very healthy discussion. I know that there have been, you mentioned you had a discussion with Trustee Sundlin, and I know Trustee Sundlin and I discussed equity at the conference. We went to the conference in September, so there have been several healthy discussions. But I want to focus on, I think these things are great. I am still a firm believer in that the Township Police and Fire, they received 2 $1,000 payments. The other union staff, they did not receive a $1,000 payment for the incredible hardships that they did go through. They did have to work in a pod, like Treasurer DeShane said. And he also said, we set the policy for the manager to appreciate employees. Yeah, we do. And there's no reason why the Township Board, we showed appreciation for police and fire twice with 2 $1,000 payments. There's no reason why this board cannot show appreciation to the rest of the employees who were here during COVID by giving them $1,000 each for what they went through. It's not always easy to work from home. There were single parents, there were married couples, there were all kinds of family situations where people were trying to work from home. They did have to stay up late. They did have to juggle schedules. They did have to juggle animals and pets and all those other things. It wasn't just a pure joyride for everyone. Sometimes people make it seem like it was a joyride. It wasn't. I had to deal with my own husband who thought I was doing nothing at home, and I'm like, I kept having to say I'm working, get out of my dining room kind of thing. And there were people that had to work here. The clerk's office had to be open, the treasurer's office had to be open, DPW had to do water main breaks and go work, and people had to go, code enforcement had to happen. There were lots of things that had to happen. This township, under your direction, and rightfully so, continued top quality prime services to the residents of Meridian Township without skipping a beat. And that doesn't happen with police and fire alone. That happens as a team, an entire team, not just police and fire, but all of the other departments as well. I am fully prepared to suspend the rules and make a motion to approve a $1,000 payment for each township employee that did not receive compensation already for their tremendous efforts that they gave during COVID.
Yeah, and just so, I think if you have a motion on the floor, I'm going to wait till you're.
I'm waiting. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
So just so you know, if there's only so much money to go around, okay? So the payment in December of 2022 is $165,000. The 1.5% increase and 1% total is about $160,000. So that's $320,000 of additional compensation on top of the 2 payments to police and fire, which was $140,000. So now you're up to $500,000, and now you've got a motion on the floor to add $165,000 to that. You're up to, you're borderline of $750,000. So what I'm saying is to you, do whatever you want to do at this point. I've said my piece on this whole issue. There is equity. We provided equity. I was here every day. I know who was here, and I know who wasn't here. So, if this is the direction you go, what we'll have to do is just, and that's fine, but we'll have to take away, we can't do everything. I mean, this is not just a percent here and a percent here, 1,000 here, and do all this. If you want to do the $1,000, go ahead and do it. And then we'll just reduce the increase on the base that we were going to provide, because it's $160,000 for the base payment, and it's $165,000 for the motion that's in front of you. So we would just take one away, and it'd be the same amount of money.
Further discussion? Mr. Abser?
Okay, so just one piece of information, and I can't say for certain that I'm correcting it, but I did some back of the envelope math on the 1 and the 1.5%. I came out with roughly 110,000, not quite 160,000. That was assuming 55,000 for the average salary. Maybe that's a little on the low end. But
I can tell you that we've done the math down to a T. It's $110,000 for 1%, and the additional 1/2 bumps it up to about 160.
okay.
Yeah.
Our average pay must be in the range of $85,000 to $90,000.
Perhaps a little lower than that.
Okay, that doesn't seem to add up, but I do want to just take a moment to be a voice of reason. We've got two competing proposals in front of the board, and I just want to take a moment to step back and talk here for a minute. Okay, so the supervisor brought up, policy governance and not delving in between and blurring these lines. I think up to this point, we've had a healthy conversation where we're blurring those lines, and it happens both ways. We've had board retreats where we talk about this. Okay, when we set the police and fire millage in 2017, the manager had a lot of dialogue on the millage rate, and that's purely a policy decision. Now, the benefit of him blurring that line to a degree was he wanted to be able to help the board promote and pass the millage and make it successful. And in order to do that, he needed to have a say in what that millage rate was. Conversely, we're having this conversation about staff appreciation and what is good for retention and recruitment and all of that. The board's role from a policy governance structure is the appropriation component, appropriating dollars, and to stipulate the number of FTEs. To the manager's point, he's saying we're going a little bit beyond that because one of the proposals gets down to very specific details about how that appropriation is doled out, right? So that's where we're at, and that's where we're perhaps talking past each other, not only blurring lines, but talking past each other to a degree. So, and the reality is that if the board wants to push through the 1,000, he's going to offset it. I take exception with the total math, but it doesn't really matter. The factor, what really will come out is there will be a Q1 budget amendment where the hard and fast math is put on paper, and we will have to approve it. And that's what will come out of this discussion ultimately in January or February or March, is a Q1 budget amendment. And so what I think is in this board's best interest and the management's best interest and the staff and the township as a whole is that the staff know what they're getting. And for me, I'm left with picking one of the two proposals. And I do like what the manager has laid out because he took a more holistic approach. Now, I want to give credit to Clerk Guthrie because she did blur the lines, and like I said, sometimes when you blur those lines, good things come out of it. The manager went and had conversations with staff and is proposing stuff that he wasn't comfortable with either. So uncomfortable conversations do create good results at times, but let's not talk past each other and go and do two things that will be in conflict with one another, one way or another, because one action will dilute the other action. Let's take the more holistic approach. And to me, the base pay increase fits with what's already in the budget, right? What's already in the budget is the lump sum of 1,000. Now it's retention at the end of the year, but the base pay complements it, and it's something that's sustainable. I don't think this board would let that, go by the wayside in the future, and I don't think the manager would take that away. So, and that's something that we've been talking about for a long time, is base pay increase, because it is sustainable in almost all circumstances. It's very rare to take someone down from 3 to 2 or 2 to 1 in terms of base pay increase. So for me, I would very much urge the board to take action on one of the two and not create this dynamic where we're going to dilute the other. And I think for equity's sake, it's good to have base pay to complement the lump sum that's already in the budget. So, or we can compete with one another, but that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Ms. Guthrie.
Thank you, and thank you, Trustee Opsmer, for that. In consideration of that, and if the manager could do this, provide information at the next board meeting, as Trustee Jackson suggested, written down so she could see it on paper, then I would take the motion off the table if that's something that you can provide us with at the next meeting, so we can see this holistic approach that you and Ms. Tehoff have been working on.
Sure. Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's what I went over, 3 times tonight, and the numbers are the numbers. They're not my numbers. The finance director went through the budget painstakingly and pulled out, and I think Mr. Perry, you did as well, pulled out all the salary lines, and I can tell you that the 1% is $110,000. It'd be a little less than that because or a little less than the 0.5% because the police and fire don't make up half of, you might be at 148, 152 instead of 160. So, and again, this discussion, I want to leave you with one thing. And this is really important. Because at this point, I really don't care what decision you make. I really don't. I've done my homework. We worked really hard on this. You can do what you want to do now. But I want to leave you with, there's a history, and this is why I started the discussion an hour ago. There's a long history of appreciation from this administration, and some of you haven't been here. And it's a deep, deep appreciation. And I'm not going to walk through it again. But this discussion started. This didn't come out of, let's give everyone $1,000. Oh no, I'm going to come up with a competing proposal. We were talking as a group, and all of us know this in this room to my right. We had a meeting 4 months ago about what are we going to do about the rising inflation, and we're giving 2% increases. We were talking about this months ago at our management team meetings. And so it's taken us a while to get here. And I'm thankful that the board wants to appreciate employees. That's a great thing. Where we disagree 100% is that, and I guess I'd ask the question, if you went back to everyone minus police and fire who didn't get the $1,000 payments, and you had to work all the time that you were given off, and I'm not just talking about your time at home, but I'm talking about the 80 hours additional and all that we gave off, what would you rather have? And time off is really, really important to our team, at least most of our team. And so I just think we got to move forward one way or another. I don't know what I can put on paper for you, but I'll write down what we've gone over tonight and get it to you. I think if you look in your emails, you'll see that we broached this flex time in an email about a week ago, but I'll put it all down on paper for you, right down to the penny on what's before everyone. But let's keep in mind, this is a $330,000 proposal in front of you, not counting the flex time. This is a substantial and bold move on the part of the township. And I hope no one leaves this room tonight thinking, boy, we should be doing more, because what we're doing is very bold, and it sets us apart from most communities. There's people who left this organization who are going to turn around now and look in the mirror and say, 4-day work week in Meridian Township? Gosh, I wish I were back there. We are creating a really, really tremendous workplace. And we're doing things that we don't have to do as a township for all of our team. And we've put equity into this. And I'll put it on paper for you and have it at the next meeting. But we've got to start planning ahead on this thing. We can't delay much longer because we've got to get into the communication to the residents about our January and February schedule. That's not going to change, because I'm not going to play Charlie Brown and Lucy with our team. I am not going to come back and take away the flex time, which is incredibly important. If you put a vote up, let's say there's 70 people in Zach's position that are not police and fire, and you put a vote up tomorrow to say, do you want the extra 0.5%? Do you want the 1%? Or do you want the flex time that's been laid out? 90% of the people are voting for the flex time. They're getting stuff they never even expected to get. I'll stop now.
Well, okay, you said you were going to withdraw your motion.
Yeah, bring some information at the meeting, and then I'll
are
withdraw
you-
this motion so we can discuss
So you-
or take action or whatever at the next meeting.
So
I
you-
don't know what the process is.
Well, you want to withdraw the motion, and is the seconder withdrawing the motion? Okay. Did you have something else on the discussion item?
Two things. First of all, this discussion of employee compensation, you and I are both employees, but our compensation is set by the elected employees' compensation commission, so none of this would ever
Correct.
apply to us.
Right.
Just want to be clear about that. Secondly,
And to add to that, Treasurer, I'm not a part of what I'm proposing as well. I want to make that very clear. I have a contract with the township. It does not include what's been brought up
Right.
tonight, and I do not participate in it. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome. I also want to thank Trustee Oppenheimer for pointing out that we really do have two proposals here. And I agree with him. The one from the manager is more organic and I think more generous. I also want to thank the clerk for her graciousness and withdrawing her motion in lieu of the manager's motion. I know you want to see it written out, but it sounds like you've come to the agreement that the manager's more organic proposal meets the goals that you had intended with the proposal that you and Trustee Jackson had made. And I think we need to move forward with that. I think it's the right move to make, but I want to compliment you on your graciousness in withdrawing that so we can move forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Officer?
Just wanted to state for the record, and I think fiscal impact is important just so we're understanding this. I misheard the manager, and when you went over the numbers, now I understand. You're saying a 1% raise on the base for all employees in the township is $110,000, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I was interpreting you to say only the employees under your proposal who would receive the 1%, which is just over half our employees, so.
Yeah.
There's
I
the
know
disconnect. I
it's
would agree, but it's important that the board understand, because we are making the appropriation ultimately and live with the budget consequence. So I just wanted to clarify the record for that, and,
It's a good number.
Yep.
Yeah.
But we have, when emotions run high, people can mishear and understand each other, and that's perfectly fine and acceptable, but I think we have arrived at a good conclusion through all this, and I know it was not a clean process perhaps, but thank you.
Courtney?
I'd just like to thank Trustee Oxenberg for putting some perspective, and again, thank the manager for thinking outside the box. I do think our entire intention is to make sure we keep all the good employees we have,
Right.
and we can, attract more employees. And so, I do appreciate that. I do appreciate the clerks. You brought this to our attention, like it was something we could do to make sure our employees felt appreciated. And I'll just say, you're around your employees all day, every day, but I have had a couple reach out with a little bit different perspective, very small component, but so also why it becomes, necessary for me as a board member to bring up these questions. So not necessarily questioning your authority, just trying to understand and make good decisions based on good information. This is the first time I've heard of your proposal, given that you've been working on it for so long. And so it takes some time to process, but I do think it's a sustainable approach. I think it's been clearly given a lot of thought, and I think this was good discussion.
Yeah. And I hope if you go back and I know you get a lot of emails from me, and probably too many, but if you go back, there's an email about a week ago that talked about the whole flex time plan and stuff.
I missed that. I apologize.
No, it's not a big deal. I mean, there's a lot that goes out.
Ms. Guthrie?
I missed it too, for obvious reasons, so my apologies. But I do want to be clear that no one on this board is saying that you have not shown staff appreciation. This proposal was to show staff that the board appreciated them. I just want to make that clear. that no one has said that, or discussed that, or talked about that, or said anything like that.
I'm not defensive about that issue at all.
I just wanted to make it clear.
I'm just emotional about the issue because when you pour so much into something and you do something for a long time and it can appear like you haven't done enough, there's been so much done, so much out of my own pocket that I won't even bring up and go through with everyone. But Shar and I have done a lot, let's put it that way. There's retirement parties, all that stuff. It gets paid by a certain way. So I'm proud of what I've done. I'm proud of what we've done. And I think this has been a really good discussion. I'm not defensive about it at all. I just want, it's my role. If I don't let you know, the old saying goes, if you don't tell the story, no one will. If I don't tell the story about what's happened in the last 8 or 9 years, because let's face it, only one of you, Mr. Supervisor, has been on the board going back to that time. I don't expect Trustee Jackson, although she was well-serving on the Planning Commission, I don't expect her to know what happened in 2013 with the budgets. That's why I went through and walked through the whole thing tonight. You probably didn't know we gave 1% per year tie-barred to growth.
Ms. Jackson.
I would add, in fact, that until a few minutes ago, I didn't understand what tie bar meant. So, but I did in fact see the email that where you started explaining that. I did not tie that to
Tie bar
it to any discussions about appreciation.
Yeah.
Anybody who works with the legislature knows what tie bar is, right, Dan?
I never did.
I didn't either.
That's not what I did.
The two things are usually not related in any way, shape, or form.
Right, but they get tie bars. Well,
Thank you.
okay, I guess my last comment would be that another thing about being 75 is I get to be officially a curmudgeon, and I apologize for being curmudgeon-y during this meeting. Thank you all. All right. So this will be on for discussion again because we don't have a motion at this time. And then we'll see whether or not we get one. All right. We now will go to the last item on discussion, which is police candidate sponsorship. We met the candidate sponsor to be sponsored, and we have now in front of us the sponsorship proposal someplace here.
I'm just here in case there's a
there
question.
you are. Yes,
I'm
Mr.
just here in case there's a question.
Okay. Would it help for us to vote on this tonight or not?
It would get the ball rolling for us.
Okay. I'll call on Mr. Deschênes.
That's why I move we suspend the rules and take action on this item tonight.
Support.
Okay?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're doing it tonight. And who wants to?
For the record?
About 3 people.
Did you get that, Zach? It's Trustee Jackson is the support.
We now need a motion. Mr. Deschênes.
I move to sponsor candidate Isabella Acker to the Mid-Michigan Police Academy Spring Semester 2022 at Lansing Community College.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported by Ms. Jackson again.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion? I don't think we really need any. Do we need to do this by a formal vote? Yeah, go ahead and call the roll.
Trustee Jackson?
Yes.
Trustee Opsmer?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Wozinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Stika?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie votes yes. Treasurer Deschênes? Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. We have no public comments because there's no public present. Other matters from board members? Mr. Opsmer.
Yes, so I've touched on this issue with the supervisor, but the Pine Village project in downtown Hazlet was brought up, which is receiving a healthy brownfield, and we're having conversations about the future of that brownfield and if we're going to revisit the interest rates. And those percentages add up over time. One concept that I've spoken to the supervisor about and would like to see and want to put it out there for the rest of the board to consider. And if you support it, let the supervisor know. I would like to see a commitment on the developer's part to hire local union labor for at least a portion of the project as part of revisiting their interest rate. So obviously they blew past their demolition dates. The whole concept of reducing the interest rate, which is an idea that the manager brought to us, is to tie it to some kind of public good, right? And so supporting local union labor is supporting good wages, not only in the union sector, but in the private sector, because it lifts the non-union sector up. Some of the trades just don't really work for projects like this, but any project that you drive by that is built by Pat Gillespie, whether it's the new Meyer Capital City Market with the hotel in it on Michigan Avenue, or the old original mixed use that he put in across from the stadium, or any of the colorful ones, those have union plumbers and pipe fitters on every single one. So typically demolition, plumbing, and electrical are trades that will pencil, meaning they come in fairly close to non-union firms, but they bring value add to the project. Downtown Okemos, they signed a PLA with plumbers and pipe fitters union contractor here in the region. I don't know that project will ever get off the ground, but so that's just one idea that I think would be a public benefit that developer could do in exchange for the monetary value that they would get out of an interest rate reduction again.
Good comment?
Just a clarifying question. So,
Yes.
Trustee Opsner, what you're suggesting is hiring union contractors, but not necessarily, this is not tied to prevailing wage.
No, I mean, if it's a union contractor, they'd pay prevailing wage. There's language that you can put in requiring PLAs for certain trades, or you could require contractors that have US DOL, meaning US Department of Labor, apprenticeship programs. There's plenty of language that you could stipulate.
Okay, thank you.
So, but it's a way to tie a new public incentive since we've exhausted. The quick, expeditious construction is off the table, but there's other things that they could do.
Thank you.
And it's a project of consequence, and it's monetarily it's similar in scale and fiscal impact to like a Gillespie project, just the square footage and the nature of the project being mixed use. It's very similar.
I'll ask the manager, where is this in terms of that project, in terms of the interest rate, et cetera?
Director Clark has had meetings with the developers and I think Director Schmidt as well over the last month. And why don't you, I won't speak for you, why don't you take your red coat off and come right up?
You could have kept it on, you're cold.
Good evening. Oh, let me take this off, sorry. Okay, so the interest schedule started September 1st. So if they had the buildings demolished and debris removed by September 1st of this year, they would have received the full 3% interest, which would have been $472,000 some odd dollars. They had until November 1st for complete demolition and debris for any portion of the interest. So the entire schedule is completely exhausted. If I had a strong guess, Disneyland version of the world, everything keeps going forward. They've reached out to us with an operator of Redico actually for the facility itself, as well as talked to Tim and I about their further construction plans. So they're getting close to starting. The question is, going through the approval processes, are we going to get what we need out of them with the changes to the Brownfield plan and the agreement by the time that they would start demo anyway? Are you going to give them incentivized interest to do what they're already getting ready to do by the end of January, February?
How does that reflect on your idea, Mr.
We could invite them. So the full reduction that we gave them with the September 1st deadline was $470 some odd thousand. There's certainly a fiscal impact there that they might have to come and at least talk to the township about it. So.
Yeah, we have a meeting with our consultant SME tomorrow to kind of bring them on the fast track that, hey, this project is really moving forward, but also what is the impact to that plan. I can give you some more information after that. Then I have to go back to the developer and say, hey, this is possibly what is the most feasible steps moving forward. They're to present a schedule here to us within the next couple of weeks as well, and then we can compare and see what makes sense.
I mean, it'd have to go through the BRA and this body, so it'd take maybe 2 months to get through the process. But I don't think they're breaking ground in the next 2 months anyway, but, I mean, there isn't.
Well, if this is only for the discussion about demolition, right?
Yeah.
Not the vertical construction of it, but if this is just the interest of them getting the buildings demolished and the debris removed, then that could be completed within the first quarter of next year.
Well, I believe it's the interest on the brownfield as a totality. So it's
It
just.
is.
Lasts over years.
Yeah,
It
it's just the
is.
percentage, it's 1 to 5. I believe we gave them only 1% interest or 2% interest with that September deadline.
Yeah, we gave them a tie-bar interest rate deadlines, and the percentage went down, trustee Officer, on time. But the other thing is that the interest rate is tied to the whole project, but it was tied to the demolition because to get the project, the impetus to get going. That's what the board did.
And what I'm saying is we could propose that they only do 4 or 3% interest if they would do PLAs, project labor agreements with trades for, demo, electric, plumbing, as an example. So the differential.
So the interest is no longer tied to the demolition of the project?
Yeah, it would
but-
be tied to a different, because we already blew past the dates. We didn't get what we wanted
I did
there.
think of that. Why make an incentive to say it's okay to go back to do it
Yeah, the
again?
purpose of the incentive is to get some good paid people out there.
So, and, I mean, just for context, and it's actually really clean math, like, when we did the standby generator last year, the cost differential was like 5% on union to non-union. It was actually, I think, less than that when it all came out. Actually, no, when we bid it without prevailing wage, the non-union firm bid 100, and then the union firm bid 105. So the cost differential is like 5% here, just for those trades. So we're not talking huge dollars, so it'd be worth something. I think it'd be worth their time to entertain if 1% is approximately $100,000. So.
Duly noted. I will take it back to the development team.
Well, it's,
Got to make sure that the board agrees with.
well, we're into just other matters at this point, but do other people on the board understand the concept that Dan and I agree with on this, and are they willing, by shaking a head, give the manager kind of direction along with Ms. Clark?
I'm shaking my head and I see you shaking your head.
Okay. We got a lot of head shakes. Okay, we're on it. Okay. Anything else from the board? Yes, Ms. Guthrie.
I want to thank Deputy Manager Perry for filling in my stead next week to be on the selection committee for the Director of Union County Road Commission. It's a much better fit anyway, so it's probably good that I'm not able to attend, and I appreciate you doing that. And so I just wanted to publicly say thank you and look forward to what that outcome will be.
Okay. Anything else from board?
I move to adjourn.
Moved.
Support.
Supported by Osmer. Any opposed? Then we're adjourned. Not to get up, but I do need my coat. And I need help getting out of the car and all that stuff.
Yep.